Chapter 1. Ruoro, you're back? Yes, Aunt May. I'm here to pick up the baby. I'll have to trouble you to take care of him for me. The baby is so obedient. It's no trouble at all. I bought these apples in town. They're very fresh. You and Uncle should try them. You're too polite. Is the baby asleep? No. He's been paying attention to the movements at the door. He's waiting for you to come back. He's not willing to carry him into the house. Is that so? The baby is just too clingy. You're the child's mother. How can he not be clingy? At the entrance of the farmhouse, the gray-haired Aunt May smiled until her face was wrinkled. She chatted enthusiastically with the young and beautiful woman. Under the shade of a tree in the courtyard, Chi-Won was lying in the cradle. He listened to the woman chatting with someone and blew bubbles out of boredom. Hearing the content of their conversation, Chi-Won sneered in his heart. How was he waiting for her to come back? He was just trying to make sure that this woman would abandon him one day. Chi-Won was indifferent and looked like he didn't care at all. But after a while, he started to get angry again. This woman didn't even look at him for a long time. As expected, she didn't care about him at all. No wonder she would abandon him in the future. Chi-Won was angry. He didn't want to pay attention to her, but he couldn't help but be attracted by her voice. A few cute wrinkles appeared on his chubby and tender little face. At this moment, the gauze above was lifted, and a silly, smiling face appeared in front of him. What's wrong with the baby? He's wrinkled like a little old man. Fu Yun's soft fingertips gently tapped the baby's forehead. She bent over and picked up the baby. She rubbed her face against his and said, "Baby, are you unhappy that Mommy didn't bring you out? Baby, don't be angry. Mommy will definitely bring you out next time." Fu Yun had just gone to town to get the express delivery. This village was too remote, and the express delivery point was in town. She had asked someone to buy a lot of baby products online. She couldn't even carry them with both hands. How could she bring the baby out? Furthermore, the baby was only 3 months old. He was too young to go out so far. That was why Fu Yunrua had entrusted the baby to the trusted auntie next door. Chi-Won did not believe the woman's nonsense at all. How many times had it been? He did not see her bringing him along. He would never believe her again. Thinking like this in his heart, Chi-Won relaxed his brows under Fu Yunrua's soft and gentle voice. When she was close to him and rubbed his face against hers, he unconsciously moved closer. Realizing that the baby was no longer throwing a tantrum, Fu Yun felt that she had coaxed him. She smiled and greeted Aunt May. "Aunt May, we'll go back first? Hey, be careful on the road. Look for me if you need anything." "All right." Fu Yunrua carried the baby out of the courtyard and walked leisurely on the cement path in the countryside. Soon, they entered the rented house. The courtyard she rented did not have a good appearance. It was a yellow mud house that farmers had discarded after they built new houses. The house was well maintained, and the walls around the house were very sturdy. It was suitable for orphans and widows to live in. There was also a yard within the walls, which was tidy and clean. The vegetable field was filled with vibrant vegetables. There were chili trees with bright red fruits, juicy cabbages, and tall persimmon trees. When Fu Yunrua was pregnant, she had planted many flowers and plants under the walls. This year, many flowers had bloomed. They were colorful and beautiful. Although they were all flowers and plants that could be seen everywhere in the countryside and were not expensive species, the decorations were neat and tidy. The entire courtyard of the farmhouse had a poetic atmosphere. This was Aunt May's old house. When she first came here more than a year ago, it was Aunt May who gave her a place to stay and took care of her. When she had a difficult time giving birth, it was Aunt May who helped her take care of the child during her confinement. The farmers were simple and warm, but there were also some who were talkative and looked down on her. It was Aunt May who stood in front of other people's houses and scolded them. She firmly defended her reputation. Uncle May's family was very famous in the village. After their family showed their intention to protect Fu Yunrua, she had a much better life in the village. Therefore, Fu Yunrua was very grateful to Aunt May's family. Chi-Won was carried home by the woman. He waited for her to feed him, but after waiting for a long time, the woman went into a daze again. Her eyes were empty, and her mind was wandering. Chi-Won stared at her in dissatisfaction. "Woman, what's wrong with you? Can't you see that I'm hungry?" As expected, she did not take him to heart. Chiwon had always remembered it in his little notebook. Since this woman was out of confinement 2 months ago, today was the second time she had abandoned him. He held it in for a while, and finally could not hold it in anymore. He let out a cry of protest. Fu Yunruo was immersed in the past. Suddenly, she was pulled back to reality by the baby's tender voice. She looked down and met her son's big round eyes that were like black grapes. "Baby, you must be anxious from waiting, right? You'll be able to eat your fill soon." Fu Yunruo hugged the baby and gently rubbed her face. She placed the baby on the small bed and skillfully raised his 2 small feet to change his diaper. Then, she picked up the baby and wiped him with a hot towel before feeding him milk. Long before Fu Yunruo lifted his clothes, Chiwon had closed his eyes. He waited until he smelled the familiar milk fragrance before opening his mouth. His small body was as red as a shrimp as he ate his food with all his might. Even though 3 months had passed, Chiwon still could not get used to it. Even though this woman gave birth to him, he still felt ashamed that he had an adult's mind. He struggled from the beginning to give up. He could only silently comfort himself that he was still a baby. Fu Yunruo saw that the baby was eating quickly and quickly. She knew that he was hungry. She felt a little guilty and gently supported the baby so that he would not choke. This time, she had been gone for too long. It had been almost an hour and a half. Next time, she would definitely rush back within an hour. After eating, Chiwon felt sleepy. He had not slept since he woke up in the morning and had to pay attention to the movements outside. He was too tired. Nestled in the familiar and soft embrace, listening to a few humming words, he quickly fell asleep. After the baby fell asleep, Fu Yunruo placed the baby on the small bed. Looking at the baby's pure and innocent sleeping face, she revealed a satisfied smile. Fu Yunruo was very glad that she had decided to keep this child. It had been more than a year since she had transmigrated to this world. Thinking back to more than a year ago, on the day she had just arrived, she was tortured by the strange feeling in her body and almost lost her mind. She hid at the stairs and curled up on the ground, trying to keep her mind. She heard the movements of a strange man outside. It seemed to be getting closer and closer. She subconsciously struggled and tried to climb the stairs. She did not know how long she had climbed. In the end, she only remembered that she seemed to have fallen into a stranger's arms. When she woke up again, she was shocked by the experience in the original owner's mind. She had actually transmigrated into the body of the female lead Feng Shui Ruo's evil stepsister in the movie Immerse that she had just watched not long ago. She was about to usher in a miserable life. A dignified young miss was chased out of her home and was scolded by the entire internet. She was in a sorry state, and because she could not live a hard life, she abandoned herself, and in the end, she fell into the water and died. The plot developed to the point where countless reporters broke in and recorded her embarrassing situation of trying to steal a chicken only to end up losing the rice used to lure it. This caused the entire internet to ridicule and scold her. Fu Yunruo recalled the fate of the original owner. Her first reaction was that she could not be discovered by the reporters, so she hurriedly ran away. She even forgot to look back to see who the man she had spent a chaotic night with last night was. She subconsciously hid and did not want to be found by anyone. Although this was a parallel world in the book, the names of the places were the same as her original world, except for the different people and lives. Fu Yunruo had nowhere to go and felt that it was not safe anywhere. Almost subconsciously, she thought of her hometown and her previous life, so she took an unlicensed taxi back. Finally, she returned to her hometown and her previous life, a small remote village in the south. Along the way, she was scared witless and clumsily covered her tracks, afraid that she would be found. Afterwards, she was a little scared. If the stranger who took the unlicensed taxi had bad intentions, her ending would not be better than her original ending. Fortunately, she arrived safely in the end. There was also this village in this world, but she did not have her own home and the villagers were strangers. At the location of her old home, the village chief lived there, which was Uncle May and Aunt May's family. That day, when she knocked on the door of her old home and saw that it was not her grandparents from that world, her tears immediately fell. In her original world, she lived in the countryside with her grandparents when she was young. When she reached the age of school, she was brought to the city to live with her parents. Her parents were workaholics. It was not that they did not love her, but they were very career-minded people. Even if they lived together, they would not see each other all year round. So she did not have a deep relationship with her parents. Her grandparents were worried about her and were not used to living in the city, so they took turns to go to the city to take care of her. It was only when she went to boarding school and high school that they occasionally went to the city. Her grandparents were already in their 70s. She suddenly transmigrated, and she was not sure whether she was dead or not in that world. If her body died, how sad would her grandparents be? Would their bodies not be able to take it? Perhaps it was because she dreamed of what she thought of in the day. She dreamed that the original owner had transmigrated into her body and was accompanying her grandparents happily. After having such dreams for several nights, it was as if she had a feeling that they should have exchanged souls. She was no longer so worried about whether her relatives in the other world were doing well or not and hid here peacefully. Fu Yunruo was most worried that those people with bad intentions would find her, but she deliberately did not think about that night and pretended that nothing had happened. She also did not notice the abnormality in her body. By the time she realized it, she was already 3 months pregnant. Fu Yunruo suddenly remembered that because of the popularity of the original book, The First Movie Queen, the author serialized a second book, The Second Movie Queen. The new female lead was the daughter of the previous male and female lead. In the book, there was a villain from an orphanage called Chiwen. He had been working hard to find trouble for the male and female lead, but because he was weak, he could not deal with the male and female lead who had a strong background. In the end, his reputation was ruined and he jumped down from the top floor. Because of the female lead's vague words at that time, although senior, but after all, then she took the initiative to bury the villain. This action brought the female lead countless praise, and everyone praised her for her beauty and kindness. There was also a discussion in the comments section that this villain might be the illegitimate son of the evil stepsister in the first book. The topic of whether it was true or not was torn in the comments section, but the author did not express his opinion. Fu Yunruo could not be sure because in the first book, after Fu Yunruo was chased out of the house and ridiculed by the entire internet, she went offline. 2 years later, because of her death, her experience of being an escort was dug out and she was ridiculed again. In the end, Feng Shuiruo stood up and asked the netizens to give her sister some face. It was not until she was pregnant that Fu Yunruo was sure that the unlucky villain was really the one in her stomach. So, not only was she trampled on by Feng Shuiruo, but her son was also trampled on by Feng Shuiruo's daughter? What kind of tragedy was this? Fu Yunruo gritted her teeth. Although she had read the novel, it did not mean that she agreed with the 3 views in the novel. No matter how well the author wrote, it could not cover up some essential problems. Other things aside, the male lead was the original body's fiancé. How could a woman who seduced her stepsister's fiancé be kind? The novel described that she could not control herself, but because of the bottom line of morality, she did not want to be a woman who destroyed other people's relationships. However, in the original body's memory, she was the epitome of green tea since childhood. Because of this, the original body's personality became more and more extreme. It could be said that the original body was played to death by the green tea behavior of the Feng family's mother and daughter. Back to the topic, after Fu Yunruo found out that she was pregnant, she hesitated for a while. In fact, she did not have much memory of that night. When she woke up the next day, she was shocked by the huge amount of information from the original body. Even the shadow of losing her virginity was covered up. Now that she thought about it, she should have avoided the man with bad intentions. The person she bumped into was probably just a passerby, and she took the initiative to pounce on him. This was also good. She would rather treat it as the product of a one-night stand without paying attention to the consequences. She did not want to be pregnant with the child of a man who was arranged by someone. That would be even more disgusting. Fu Yunruo decided to give birth to the child after careful consideration. Firstly, the child's future would be too tragic. She wanted to start over again. She wanted to love the child well and make up for what she owed the child with the original body. Secondly, she was too unfamiliar with this world. The original body's only relative was unreliable. She was too lonely. She wanted a tie. The most important point was that she could not make up her mind to abort the child and kill a life. From the moment she felt the movement of the child in her stomach, she knew that she would not regret this decision in her life. Chapter 2. Chiwon woke up from his restless sleep and stared at the childish gauze curtain. The room was quiet, and he wanted to cry out loud, but he held it back in time. As a 3-month-old baby with adult thoughts, he would not cry the moment he woke up like other children. He struggled to pull his hand out of the not-too-tight swaddle, blinked his big black eyes, and pondered seriously. Where did that woman go? As he pondered, he subconsciously stuffed his chubby hand into his mouth and sucked it with relish. Transparent liquid flowed out from the corner of his mouth, and Chiwon's small body stiffened. He nonchalantly took out his wet hand and rubbed it in his drool pocket. Suddenly, his small face scrunched up, and his fair cheeks turned red. He tried hard to control his body's reaction, but something still flowed out. Chiwon could not hold it in any longer, and he started to howl. Soon, there was movement outside the door, and someone walked into the room towards him. "Baby, you're awake?" Fu Yunrua smiled and picked up the baby. She tossed him up and coaxed him before walking out. "Go and pee first." "Aya, you're already peeing. Mommy will change your diapers for you." Why did she have to say such things out loud? Did he not want to lose face? Chiwon was being fiddled with by the woman, and he looked like he had seen through the world of mortals. Actually, he would get used to this kind of thing as he got used to it, right? A warm and soft pacifier was suddenly stuffed into his small mouth, and he subconsciously sucked it. Warm water? He sucked a few more mouthfuls. He was thirsty, and howling was too taxing on his throat. He needed to moisten it. After drinking the water, the woman hung a brightly colored bell on the top of his pram, and it jingled when he shook it. He did not care, and he did not take another look. Was he such a childish person? Chiwon was in good spirits at this time. He lay on his back, and he could see the woman, so he looked at her attentively. Of course, it had to be emphasized that he did not want to look at her, but his small body was still weak, and he could not even move his head. It was not what he wanted to look at. Fu Yun tidied up the baby, put him in the pram, and pushed him out to the courtyard. It was a cloudy day today. The temperature was not high, and there was no wind. The child could be placed in the yard. She could see him as soon as she looked up. If Fu Yun went to the vegetable field to pick vegetables, it would be noon soon. She prepared to stir-fry some vegetables. There was already bone soup simmering in the kitchen. It was enough for her to eat alone. After Fu Yun finished picking the vegetables, she looked at the rows of mustard greens. It was time to put them away and dry them, she thought. She went to the tap and shook the water to wash the vegetables. Then, she went to the kitchen to stir-fry a plate of vegetables. She ate her lunch with the bone broth and also ate her baby's lunch. She added some salt to the bone broth in the pot and put it in a thermos. She was going to give it to Uncle May and Aunt May. Because she was still feeding the children, the food that entered her mouth was rather bland, while Uncle May and Aunt May's tastes were rather heavy. Perhaps the older generation of farmers were more frugal. Even if the family was not short of money, they would not often buy meat to eat, especially when there were no children at home. They might only buy meat once every 10 days or half a month. As the village chief, Uncle May's family did not often eat meat and fish. They were used to simple tea and plain food. Fu Yun often made soup. She would specially make more soup and send it to them. She carried the thermos and pushed the baby carriage out of the courtyard towards the May family's house. The old house was only about 10 meters away from the May family's house. If she shouted in the old house, they would be able to hear her. When Fu Yun came over, Uncle May and Aunt May were bringing out the food and preparing for lunch. After getting along with each other for a long time, Fu Yun also knew their lunch schedule. They usually started eating after 12:30 p.m. Uncle May, Aunt May. Fu Yun shouted and pushed the baby carriage into the house. "Ruru, while you're here, come and sit. It's time to eat." Aunt May greeted her warmly. "I've eaten at home. Aunt May, this is some bone soup I made. I'll give it to you and Uncle May to drink. There's too much, I can't finish it." "You child, if you can't finish it at noon, keep it for dinner." "I'll keep it. I made too much. I won't be able to finish it at night. It's too wasteful to throw it away." Before Aunt May could say anything, Fu Yun said coquettishly, Aunt May, quickly bring the soup basin. I'm tired from carrying it. Besides, I still have to trouble you to teach me how to dry vegetables when you're free. You're so polite that I'm embarrassed to call you. Fu Yun also knew how to dry vegetables, but she had eaten the dried vegetables given by Aunt May before and felt that it was better than hers, so she wanted to learn from Aunt May. Uncle May said, "This is the child's kind intentions. Just accept it." When Aunt May heard this, she went to the kitchen to get the soup basin and poured the bone soup from the thermos into the basin. Fu Yun carried the empty thermos and said, "Then I'll go back first. I have to coax the baby to sleep." "Okay, I'll go over when I'm free." "Okay." Fu Yunruo pushed the pram and walked back slowly. When she reached home, the baby also started to fall asleep. She also felt sleepy when she saw him. Hence, she carried the baby to bed and coaxed him to sleep. She also fell asleep at the side. Fu Yun slept until almost 2 o'clock. Her head was still dizzy, and her body was soft as she lay there. The baby was sleeping soundly beside her. His puffy little cheeks were flushed red. His little chubby hands were clenched into fists by his sides. When she got closer, she could hear his soft snoring. Her heart melted into a puddle of water. Her baby was the most adorable baby in the world. Fu Yunruo reached out and took the phone on the table. She took countless photos from various angles before she ended the session reluctantly. She was completely awake now, but she still did not want to get up. Hence, she sat at the side and played with her phone. Her original phone card was useless from the moment she escaped. She was worried that someone would use it to track her, so she bought an anonymous card. The anonymous card affected the use of some functions, but Fu Yun only used it to surf the internet and check for information. She did not use it to contact others. She did not pay as much attention to the outside news as she did in the beginning. She would only browse the entertainment news occasionally. Feng Shui's news articles were basically about what endorsement she took and what role she played as the female lead. They gossiped about her relationship with the son of a wealthy family. Everything was thriving and calm. She also browsed through the news related to the Fu family. There were no rumors that President Fu had chased his daughter out of the house. She thought to herself that perhaps he was afraid of being embarrassed and did not want others to expose it. Fu Yun had been paying attention to the news on the internet, but that incident did not cause any ripples. This was completely different from the bloody storm in the original novel. Fu Yunruo didn't think that the female lead had found her conscience, even if she had escaped in time. With the ability of the female lead and her stepmother, they would have made a storm out of it. For example, she had drugged the female lead, or she had fled to avoid punishment. Fu Yun saw from the original owner's memories that this novel was not true. The independent, kind, and tenacious female lead was a question mark. The female lead was the original owner's stepsister. Ever since this mother and daughter entered the Fu family, they treated her very well on the surface. But in reality, she did not know how much they had wronged her. At that time, the original owner was young and did not know how to express herself. She complained to her father many times, but was reprimanded time and time again. Gradually, the original owner understood that her father was not reliable. She became sharper in an attempt to protect herself. The chauvinistic Fu Shichin's father did not know that there were many ways for a stepmother to torture her stepdaughter. Fu Yun combined the original owner's memories with the original owner's memories and felt sad. It was not easy for the original owner to grow up, so it was normal for her personality to become more extreme. But she was not really evil. It was just that her father was taken away. Her identity as the young lady of the Fu family was also taken away. In the end, even her childhood sweetheart fiancé was taken away. The original owner's method of revenge was to drug her as a warning, but she did not expect herself to drink it. Fu Yun thought back to how she felt at that time. It was definitely not as simple as a drug. So, this female lead was not innocent and kind. She was just gentle and kind on the surface, slowly taking away everything from the original owner. She could not understand why the female lead and her daughter would let go of this opportunity. Was it because she escaped in time and was not caught on the spot, so there was no evidence? Forget it, there was no need to worry about this matter. If they wanted to make an issue out of it, they would have used it in a year. It must be because they could not use this matter to deal with her. Since it was like this, there was no need for her to be afraid. Then should she bring the baby out? Fu Yun thought about it and dispelled this idea. The original owner died 2 years after being expelled from the family. The exact time was not clear. Outside, she had to be afraid that she would accidentally die one day and that she would not be able to protect the child. It was better to wait for the original owner's death to pass. It was just that she was almost out of cash. She did not dare to use her card to withdraw money now. Her card might have been frozen long ago. When she was running away, she hurriedly took out 100,000 yuan and put it in a backpack that she bought at the last minute. After saving, she spent 70,000 to 80,000 yuan in a year. Moreover, she could save for herself, but not for the baby. The baby's appetite was getting bigger and bigger. There was not enough breast milk to eat. In the future, when he mainly drank milk powder, she might not even be able to afford milk powder. She still had to think of a way to earn some money. Chiwen slept well. Perhaps it was because there was a familiar scent beside him. He was not awakened. When he opened his eyes, the woman was still sitting beside him. She was playing with her phone with one hand and stroking him from time to time with the other. He looked at her and unconsciously grinned. Fu Yun saw this scene. The baby was smiling innocently at her. She put down her phone and lowered her head to rub against his little belly. Her voice was so soft that it could be pinched out of water. What good dream did the baby have to be so happy? Caca. Oh. The baby can't see me. I see you. Waha. He smiled. How could he possibly smile? Chiwen thought so logically, but he could not control his body's instincts. He was teased and rubbed against by the woman and let out a chuckle. Fu Yun played a little game with her son for a while before she was satisfied and carried him to solve the problem of eating, drinking, and defecating. Chi Wen's little chubby face was red because of Fu Yun's efforts. Well, it was all because the baby's instincts were too strong. He could not control his emotions and express them. In fact, he was not happy. Also, he had to seriously emphasize that this woman was too childish. He had to lower himself to play such a childish game with her. Chapter 3. In summer, the sun always rose quickly in the morning. Perhaps it was because she had slept a little too much yesterday, but Fu Yun woke up a little early today. She looked at the baby and saw that he had not woken up yet, so she got out of bed quietly. She put a pillow on the edge of the bed and went out. The baby didn't even know how to turn over and was sleeping in the bed. There was no need to worry about falling down. Fu Yun had left the door open. She had just made breakfast and tidied up the courtyard. Then, she went into the house to see if the baby had woken up. Sure enough, when she went in, the baby had already woken up. He was entertaining himself on the bed without making any noise. After taking care of the baby for more than 3 months, Fu Yun also knew some of the baby's habits. No matter how soundly the baby slept, as long as she was not by his side, he would wake up very quickly. Fu Yun carried the baby with a smile. "Good morning, baby. The baby is even cuter today." Fu Yun spoke softly as she tidied up the baby swiftly. After feeding him, she placed him in the pram. The most obedient thing about the baby was that he didn't have to be carried by her all the time. The little guy was chubby, and her hands would get sore if she carried him for a long time. Therefore, she often put him on the small cart and waited by his side. The baby was very quiet and obedient and wouldn't make a fuss. Fu Yun had just finished her breakfast and was washing the dishes when she heard a voice outside the courtyard. "Ruoro, are you there?" "Aunt May, I'm here." Fu Yun raised her voice slightly as she replied. Aunt May quickly entered the courtyard. She smiled and said, "I guessed that you would wake up at this time." Fu Yun pursed her lips and smiled, feeling a little embarrassed. "Have you had breakfast?" "I made some porridge." "You don't have to care about me." Aunt May saw that the vegetable field was full of work, so she walked over and said, "Didn't you want to dry the vegetables?" "I'm free today." Aunt May bent down to pull out the mustard. Fu Yun's eyes lit up and she said sweetly, "Thank you, Aunt May." Then she prepared to go over and pull out the vegetables. Annie May waved her hand at Fu Yun. "Go and get a vegetable basket." Therefore, Fu Yun Ruo went to the kitchen to get the basket. The two of them worked together to remove the vegetables and rinse them before carrying them to the kitchen. Fu Yun took off her straw hat. Although it blocked the direct sunlight, it was still red from the sun. However, she did not care. She wiped her sweat. Thinking about how she was about to become a delicacy, she was filled with motivation. In the kitchen, Fu Yunrua sat in front of the earthen stove to light the fire. Aunt May stood by the stove and put mustard vegetables into a big iron pot of boiling water. There was a baby carriage next to her, and her back was facing the stove, so she didn't have to worry about the baby splashing water. Bao Bao was too attached to Fu Yunrua. As long as she showed signs of leaving his sensing range, a pair of big black eyes would chase after her. He didn't make a fuss and just looked at her quietly. Her heart softened, and she felt that it was a sin to leave the baby alone. "Have you decided on the child's name?" Aunt May asked casually as she boiled the vegetables. "Not yet." Fu Yun looked extremely distressed. Ever since she decided to give birth to the child, Fu Yunrua had been thinking about this problem. She even bought a dictionary for this reason. She knew that Bao Bao was called Chiwen in the original novel, but Chiwen's life was a tragedy. She wanted Bao Bao to have a brand new and happy life, so she had been hesitating whether to change his name. Fu Chiwen seemed to be a good name, but with her aesthetics, she would not give the child this name. Fortunately, she was unable to register the child's household registration for the time being, so she was not in a hurry to name him. After Bao Bao was born, taking care of him consumed a lot of her energy, so she forgot about the matter of naming him. Now that Aunt May suddenly mentioned it, Fu Yunrua felt that it was urgent to name the baby. Aunt May said with a smile as she boiled the mustard vegetables, "When the child was just born, your uncle even calculated the time for the child and said that he was short of water. You never mentioned naming the child, so he was too embarrassed to tell you. Although science is promoted now and not superstitious, it is still for the sake of the child. I hope that the child can have a smooth life. Believe it or not, you can take it as a reference." Aunt May did not ask Fu Yunrua to name the child according to their elders' wishes. They were particular about this, but after all, Fu Yunrua was not from here. This child was obviously from the city. Although she saw that she did farm work very well, she also thought that she was a city girl who had lived in the countryside before. Although she did not know why she came to such a remote countryside, Aunt May still remembered that when she opened the door, Fu Yunrua cried as soon as she saw her. She cried until her heart softened. This was also the reason why she took care of Fu Yunrua. She felt that this child was to her liking. She and the old man only had this son, and he was also the only university student in the village. Now that he was studying in a big city, they felt sorry for him. It was not easy for him to come back, so they only let him come home once a year. Last New Year, he said that he found a very good internship job and did not come back for the new year. No matter how much they worried about him, they did not cause any trouble for him. If they had a daughter, she would definitely be as lovable as this child. Fu Yunrua smiled. Uncle is considerate. She did not say whether she believed it or not. Instead, she thought about it. Could it be that the name Chi Wenrua was given because of this? But she did not see Chi Wenrua's life go smoothly in her previous life. The original book did not mention the origin of the name Chi Wenrua. Could it be that the original owner gave it to her? It was not impossible. Perhaps when she was sent to the orphanage, this name was written on her body, so she was given this name. What if? If that was the case, it would not be good for her to give the baby a new name. Fu Yunrua suddenly had a flash of inspiration. She clapped her hands. Fu Wenrua. Aunt May looked over, and Fu Yunrua said affirmatively, "Let's call him Fu Wanwen. I hope that the baby's life will be warm." She did not want to experience the coldness of the world early on. This way, it could be considered to be in line with her intention of giving a new name, and she would not let down the original owner. Fu Yun looked at Aunt May expectantly, hoping that she would give her confirmation. Aunt May laughed and said, "It's a very nice name. It's very cute and very suitable for the baby." Chi-won, who was playing with her chubby feet out of boredom, he rejected the name. It did not suit his mature and elegant image at all. Chi-won made a protesting wah. Fu Yunrua looked over in an instant and smiled. She said in surprise, "Looks like Bao Bao likes this name very much too. Isn't that right, baby Wenwon?" No." Chi-won bared his fangs and brandished his claws, trying to let the two adults see his protest. "Look at how excited the baby is." "That's right, haha, Chi-won." This hateful woman didn't understand his thoughts at all. Chi-won unilaterally decided to give her a cold shoulder. He decided to ignore this woman and let her see his determination to resist this childish name. Chiwen closed his eyes and refused to let this woman appear in his sight. Is Bao Bao going to sleep? Fu Yunruo came over to take a look. Chiwen did not say a word and did not give any response. Hence, Fu Yunruo and Aunt May lowered their voices and continued talking. By the way, Aunt May, what kind of jobs can I earn money from here? Are you short of money? Aunt May asked in surprise. No. Fu Yunruo denied repeatedly. I'm just thinking that I can't just sit around and eat. I still have to raise Bao Bao. Aunt May reluctantly believed her. She thought for a while and said, the village is remote, so most of them are self-sufficient. Some daily necessities can be bought in town. The shops in town are managed by their own people. They won't hire outsiders. Fu Yunruo looked disappointed. Thinking about it, how could there be any jobs in the countryside? You still have to take care of Bao Bao. How can you have the time to work? If you're short of money, you have to ask me and your uncle. We don't spend much money, so we still have some savings. I'm already very grateful that you're willing to give me a place to stay. How can I give you any more trouble? You're right. There's still Bao Bao. I can't go out to work either. There's no hurry. If there's a suitable job in the future, I'll ask for you. Aunt May thought that she was a girl and had to raise a child. She might not have much savings, so she secretly kept this matter in her heart. Then I'll have to trouble you. Chiwen was originally not listening, watching, or paying attention, but after a while, he was attracted by their conversation and secretly pricked up his ears to listen. He closed his eyes. As he was sleepy, he thought, can't this woman afford to raise me? Is she going to abandon me just because she's short of money? He thought angrily, anyway, I'll become a best actor in the future. I'll casually shoot an advertisement and earn a lot of money. I'll make you regret it. Then, he could not resist his instincts and fell asleep. Fu Yunruo saw that Bao Bao was sleeping soundly, so she carried him back to the room to sleep. Then, she turned on a small fan to blow at an angle. She had just gone out and was about to dry the scalding mustard greens with Aunt May on a dustpan under the sun. Aunt May said, the sun is strong now. Don't come out to bask in the sun. Your tender skin is going to get sunburned. It's okay. My skin is rough and my flesh is thick. How could Fu Yunruo just watch? Go back to the room to look at the child. If the child falls off the bed, he will suffer. No, Bao Bao doesn't know how to turn over yet. 3 flips, 6 sits, 7 rolls, and 8 crawls. Bao Bao is already more than 3 months old. He might be able to turn over before you see him. Is that so? Fu Yunruo had a look of enlightenment. So there was such a saying. Thinking of this, she was not at ease. Then I'll go and take a look. Fu Yunruo quickly walked into the room. Originally, there was only a pillow by the bed. Now, no matter how she looked at it, she felt that it was not safe. Hence, she moved Bao Bao to the wall and folded a tall blanket by the bed. After ensuring that he could not escape, she went out. When she reached the courtyard, Aunt May had already finished drying the vegetables. She said to Fu Yunruo, let's wait for 5 days and they will be dry. Yes. Aunt May, at noon. Before Fu Yunruo could finish speaking, Aunt May twisted her body and nimbly ran out of the courtyard. I'll go back first. The old man is still waiting for me to go back and cook. Fu Yunruo watched her disappear quickly. Aunt May refused to stay for dinner. Fu Yunruo still wanted to express her gratitude. Coincidentally, there were fruits at home, so she brought them over. At night, it was still very early. There was no entertainment in the countryside, and she did not like to watch dramas, so she played with Bao Bao on the bed. At this time, Bao Bao was still very energetic, but he was too cold today. No matter how she teased him, he did not respond. Fu Yunruo thought in distress. Could it be that these toys were no longer charming? She remembered what Aunt May said during the day and suddenly had something to do. She lay beside Bao Bao. Bao Bao, look at me. Quickly look at Mummy. Hey. Fu Yunruo pretended to turn over with difficulty and then turned to look at Bao Bao. I turned over. Isn't Mummy very powerful? Look again. Fu Yunruo turned over again and looked at the baby expectantly. Has the baby learned it? Has the baby learned it? Fu Yun was even more motivated to demonstrate when she saw the baby's dark eyes staring straight at her. His little cheeks were puffed up, and he looked extremely adorable. Hey, watch me turn the tables. I'll flip, 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 flip. Chi-Won was speechless. He watched as the woman tossed and turned as if he was looking at an idiot. Who wouldn't know such a simple action? He didn't care about this childish woman. Aya, what about the baby? Mommy doesn't know how to flip over. How can I flip over? Her pretty face scrunched up as she looked over pitifully with a pleading expression. Chi-Won, this stupid woman is really hopeless. She can't even remember how to turn over. Look at me. Chi-Won held his breath and shook his small body vigorously. Finally, he turned over with difficulty and looked at the woman. Did you see that stupid woman? That's how she flipped over. Wow, the baby is so powerful. Fu Yun Ruo clapped her hands in surprise and turned over to lie on her stomach. Then, she continued to frown. Then how do I flip back? Sigh, it's really too difficult for me. Wasn't this simple? Look, Chi-Won raised his head and supported his small body as he tried his best to flip back. He crossed his chubby arms and legs and looked at her proudly. Did you see that stupid woman? Fu Yun Ruo praised him. Wow, the baby is so powerful. You're awesome. The baby is the most powerful baby that mommy has ever seen. The baby will be even more powerful if you flip over again. That was natural. Chi-Won was extremely proud. It was just flipping over. How could it be difficult for him? The Golden Horse Best Actor. Under the woman's sweet words, Chi-Won flipped over again and enjoyed the woman's fancy flattery. After a long time, he suddenly reacted. That's not right. Wasn't he in a Cold War? Why was he playing such a childish game again? He looked up angrily and saw a proud face smiling especially brightly. He couldn't get angry. Chapter 4. Chi-Won fell into an autistic state. He had already decided to ignore her, but in the end, he was always seduced into playing with her. Was he so childish and ridiculous when he was young? When he saw other children chasing and playing with their parents outside, he would scoff at them and look down on them. Since he could remember, in order to snatch a bite of food, he would fight with children who were older than him. In order to stand out, he crawled and crawled. In the entertainment industry, he was treading on thin ice and trembled with fear. Even when he became famous later on, he still had to plan step by step. So when he could not remember, there was also such a simple time? He could not remember at all. Fu Yun Ruo did not know the ups and downs of her son's inner thoughts. After her son turned over a new leaf, she could not wait to share it with others. Early the next morning, she carried the baby to Aunt May's house. Before entering the house, she said excitedly, "Aunt May, the baby can turn over." Aunt May was drying clothes in the courtyard. When she heard that, she smiled and said, "Io, the baby can turn over. That's great." Uncle May came out of the house with a fan in his hand. "When one can turn over?" "Yes, Uncle May," Fu Yun Ruo replied with a smile. "Last night, when one turned over 3 times." Fu Yun Ruo pondered for a moment. Since they had already decided on the baby's name, there was no need to call him by such a common nickname. She decided to change his name to Won in the future. "That's amazing." Uncle May immediately smiled. Aunt May took out a bamboo mat and laid it on the floor of the living room. Then, she placed a thin blanket on it. Fu Yun Ruo gently placed the baby on it and encouraged him, "Won, turn over and show your grandparents." Uncle May and his wife also came over and watched happily. Chi-Won lay on the mat and looked at them silently. He subconsciously stuffed his chubby fingers into his mouth. He did not want to perform. Fu Yun Ruo pulled his chubby little hand out and wiped the saliva on it. She also wiped the corner of his mouth. "Won, you can't eat my hand." Fu Yun coaxed the baby for a while, but the baby was still quiet and did not respond. Aunt May was disappointed that the baby didn't turn over, but she smiled and said, "The child is still young and doesn't understand. When he wants to turn over, he will naturally turn over." "That's right. Children grow fast. They'll be able to crawl and walk very soon. We'll have a lot to see then," Fu Yun said proudly. "When one is very obedient, she must be very worry-free." Chi-Won looked at the woman and then at Grandpa May and Grandma May. Then, he moved his limbs and used all his strength to turn over. After flipping over a few times last night, he had already mastered this skill. He knew how to flip over faster and more effortlessly. As soon as he turned over and laid on his stomach, his ears were filled with praises and flattery, as if he had done something amazing. He really couldn't understand these adults. It was just a flip, and he didn't know what kind of fun it was. Every time he moved, he would cry out in surprise for a long time. What a big fuss. He flipped over again and looked at the three faces that were smiling like flowers. Well, he gave them face because Grandpa May and Grandma May had taken care of him a lot. He comforted himself in his heart. He just took it as a form of entertainment. After showing off, Fu Yun carried the baby home in satisfaction. Since then, she fell in love with this game. Every day, she would coax the baby to flip over for her to see. She wanted to record the child's growth process. It was just that the baby was too cold. Every time, she had to personally demonstrate a few times before he would give her face and flip over. Fu Yun sometimes wondered if the baby was treating her as a toy. The weather was getting hotter and hotter. The old house had a courtyard, trees, and wind, so the house was not particularly hot. It was fine to just turn on the fan. Children were tender and weak, so they couldn't be exposed to such a strong sun. Fu Yun basically took care of her son at home every day. Everyone didn't like to go out during the day, but the village was lively in the evening and at night. The neighbors in the village fanned themselves and sat on small stools, talking about family matters. The older children ran around with the younger children laughing and playing. Fu Yun also carried the child out for a walk to get some fresh air. Even a homebody would feel bored staying in the same house all day. Most of the people who stayed in the village were the elderly and the children who were left behind in their hometown. Most of the young people went out to work. Fu Yun and the baby, this pair of good-looking mother and son, were very conspicuous in the middle. She had been here for more than a year and had a good relationship with most of the people in the village. She also had a good relationship with the neighbors. Of course, her relationship with the children was even better. When the older children saw such a beautiful older sister who was so friendly to them, they naturally circled around her. As soon as they saw Fu Yun appear with a baby carriage, a group of children surrounded her. The 4-year-old little Shirtu used his sturdy body to occupy the front position. He stuck to Fu Yun's side and repeatedly called her older sister. Then, he shouted that he wanted to see his younger brother. Little Shirtu looked strong and very energetic. Fu Yun opened the gauze curtain and a few small heads came over. Little Shirtu held the edge of the baby carriage and leaned closer to look. He asked in a childish voice, "Older sister Ruro, when can my younger brother play with me?" Children didn't care about the seniority of the adults. In their eyes, a beautiful older sister was a beautiful older sister and a younger brother was a younger brother. "It'll be soon," Fu Yunrua said gently. "Older sister Ruro, this is my new toy for my younger brother to play with." "Thank you, Junjun. But my younger brother is still young and can't play with him." "Junjun, you can play with me when you grow up. I will take good care of him and let him play with me in the future. I want to play hide and seek with my younger brother." "Okay. I want to play hopscotch with my younger brother and play house. I want to pick fruits with my younger brother." Okay. I will arrange everything." Fu Yun generously agreed on behalf of the baby. Chi won. He didn't want to play these childish games. After the children got the promise and saw enough of their younger brother, they were satisfied and ran off to play. Soon after, a group of aunties gathered around and praised, "Baby is really good-looking. He looks even more beautiful than a little girl. Io, his eyes are so dark and swarthy. They are so lively. Baby is so obedient. He doesn't make a fuss at all. If my little brat was half as obedient as him, I would wake up laughing in my dreams." When Wen's baby was quite popular in the village. He could be said to be popular with both men and women, old and young. He was raised to be fair and chubby. He was especially cute with a pair of big eyes like Fu Yun's that he inherited from her. His black grape-like eyes were full of spirit. The child was also very obedient and didn't make a fuss at all. He just looked at you so obediently that your heart would melt. Fu Yun sometimes felt that her life in the village was getting smoother and smoother because of her baby's charm. She felt proud of him. Chiwen was surrounded and discussed like a panda. He was as calm as the wind and as motionless as a mountain. He didn't panic. This was just a small scene. He had experienced this many times. Chiwen listened to the various voices around him. The young and soft voice of the woman was especially prominent. Suddenly, a sharp voice said, "Ruaru, look at how hard it is for you to raise a child as a single woman. Raising a child is not a simple task. You have to give the child a complete family. I'm here to matchmake with you. I have a relative's aunt's daughter's son. He has a house and a shop in town. Although he is older than you by 7 or 8 years, he has never been married. He doesn't mind if you bring the child over. What do you think?" Fu Yun's face stiffened. She was about to refuse when Aunt Mei scolded with her hands on her hips. "Wang Tsueju, what nonsense are you spouting? Who doesn't know your relatives? He's already 30 years old. He's lazy and has high standards. Would you want such a son-in-law? He's not reliable at all." "That's right. Rua is beautiful and kind. It's enough for her to marry into the city. Why would she want a slacker who does nothing all day?" The others also condemned Wang Tsueju for being unreasonable. Wang Tsueju straightened her neck. "Aren't I doing this with good intentions? Although he's a bit lazy, there's nothing wrong with him. Moreover, he has a shop at home. He won't starve to death. Rua won't have to work so hard if she marries over. No matter how good Rua is, she still has a child. Then why don't you let your daughter marry over?" Wang Tsueju's face turned ugly. She muttered that her good intentions were not rewarded and hurried home. Rua, don't mind her. Wang Tsueju just doesn't watch her mouth. She doesn't think before she speaks. Fu Yun smiled and shook her head, indicating that she did not take it to heart. In the end, there were also people who advised her that if she met a reliable family, she should consider it. A young woman with a child alone was not a good thing. She still needed a companion. Fu Yun knew that they were doing this for her. They grew up in remote rural areas and did not experience the baptism of the big city. Most of them were more traditional and conservative. She was really afraid that they would really look for her. She only said that she would focus on accompanying her child for the next few years and would not consider her own affairs for the time being. Then, she ran away with her child. Fu Yun only felt relieved when she returned home. She decided not to go out for a walk for the next few days. She would wait until the limelight was over. Being urged to get married was really too scary. Fu Yun looked down. The baby was quietly staying in the stroller, as if in a daze. She saw that it was about time. She picked up the baby and coaxed. "The baby wants to sleep." Chiwen lay on the bed and listened to the woman's light snort. He felt the breath beside him, but he did not feel sleepy at all. He unconsciously clenched his small fists. There were many messy thoughts in his mind. From the time he was born until now, there had never been another relative in his family other than a woman, let alone a blood-related other half. Chiwen could also see that the woman was incompatible with everyone in the countryside. Obviously, they were not from the same world. The truth was actually very easy to deduce. He thought that this woman was so stupid. She must have been deceived by scum. Her family was very disappointed in her and did not care about her. She had nowhere to go, so she wandered around and wandered to the countryside. This woman was almost out of money and could not afford to support him. Perhaps not long after, she would not be able to persevere and find someone to marry. Perhaps the family she found later did not want a burden like him, so she hardened her heart and threw him to the orphanage. Realizing this result, his heart suddenly turned cold. He could not help but sneer. This heartless woman. Negative emotions surged from the bottom of his heart. He could not help but let out a few cries. Fu Yun, who was coaxing the baby to sleep and almost fell asleep herself, was suddenly startled by the high-decibel sound of the baby's cries. She was instantly awakened. She focused her eyes and saw that the baby who was supposed to sleep did not show any signs of sleeping. Instead, he looked very energetic. He was babbling in a language that no one could understand and was even dancing with great energy. "One, be good. You have to sleep. You have to sleep more to grow up. Baby, be good. Wah. Chapter 5. Fu Yun later realized that her son had become lively. He no longer only babbled when he was hungry or when he needed to pee. At other times, he was obedient and did not cause trouble. At that time, Fuyun still felt that her son was like a girl. She was worried that boys were too quiet. Now that he was lively, she felt that it was better this way. In the past, he was too quiet, and it made her inexplicably worried. Now that he liked to cry, it was as if a big stone had been removed from her heart. However, after a few days, Fuyun could not take it anymore. He was really too noisy. He seemed to have endless things to say every day. Other than when he was sleeping, there was only his voice. It was as if he had ADHD and could not stop for a moment. Only when he was tired and fell asleep would he have a moment of peace. Moreover, when he was placed in the stroller, he was unhappy and insisted that someone carry him. No one else could carry him. He only wanted her to carry him. Previously, Auntie May could still carry him. Now that she carried him, his small body straightened and he was very resistant. The little guy was really strong. Fuyun was really afraid that she would not be able to hold him and fall, so she could only carry him herself. And recently, the baby did not like to drink milk powder. After the baby was 3 months old, Fuyun bought a can of milk powder suitable for this age. She fed him once before he went to bed at night and breastfed him at other times. When Fuyun drank milk powder for the first time, she felt that the baby liked to drink milk powder more. However, when Fuyun heard that breast milk could strengthen his immune system, she was determined to only soak in milk powder once a day. Now, he was very resistant to drinking milk powder. When he saw that she was going to make milk powder, he babbled excitedly. After she made milk powder, he still refused to drink it. Fuyun was worried that the baby's body was not well, so she specially went to the clinic to take a look. The doctor diagnosed that there was no problem. When she saw that he was still drinking milk normally and that the baby fat on his body did not decrease, she felt relieved. Perhaps he felt that milk powder was not as good as breast milk, but the child's taste changed. Fuyun finally understood the hardships of the complaints of the mothers on the internet. At that time, she compared herself to the mothers on the parenting forum and felt very proud. Her son was the most considerate and obedient in the world. As expected, one should not be too arrogant. She finally understood what it meant when a child was a little angel when asleep and a little devil when awake. If Fuyun was really working hard and happy. Recently, the baby did not like to play with toys. Every time she took out a toy to play with him, his little chubby hands would wave and push her away. His little voice would babble, as if he was saying that he did not like toys. Fuyun thought that he liked the new and was tired of the old, so she specially went to buy a new toy. She did not expect the baby's voice to become even louder, as if he was angry with her. Chi-Won was indeed angry. This woman was too much of a wastrel. He didn't know how to save money at all. In order to prevent this woman from starving to death so quickly, in order to save some money for her, he even saved his own rations. In the end, he even spent a lot of effort to buy these useless toys. She just wanted to spend all the money earlier so that she could have an excuse to get rid of him, right? Since that was the case, it was better to get tired of him and throw him away as soon as possible. Chi-Won deliberately caused trouble every day. The sooner she could not hold on, the sooner she would throw him away. Anyway, he did not care. There was a heavy rain yesterday afternoon, and it lasted until the second half of the night. When they woke up in the morning, the weather was cool and the heat was washed away. There was still a shallow circle of water marks on the ground that had not dried up. Chi-Won had not gone out for a few days. Today, he saw the woman carefully put him in the stroller and seemed to be preparing to go out. He originally wanted to cause trouble first, but when he saw the dark circles under her eyes and the obvious fatigue on her face, he knew that she had not rested well for many days. Chi-Won, who was about to make a fuss and asked to be carried, did not make a fuss until he was put down and pushed away. Chi-Won thought that he should not make a fuss today. If he angered her and she did not bring him out, the gains would not make up for the losses. He had not gone out for many days, although there was nothing fun to do outside. Fuyun pushed the stroller along the road and looked at the countryside scenery by the roadside. The rice fields in June were still green, but they had already borne rice ears. It looked very pleasing to the eye. The mountain peaks in the distance were washed by the rain, and they looked even more green and lush, making people feel relaxed and happy. The sun was high in the sky today, but it was not hot. Many people came out to work. After walking for a while, she heard someone shouting behind her, "Rule, rule." Fu Yunruo turned around and saw Aunt May walking towards her quickly with a hoe on her shoulder. Aunt May. Fu Yunruo's eyes immediately curved, and her small face became even brighter. I went to your house but didn't see you. I didn't expect you to come here. Aunt May walked in front of Fu Yunruo and placed the hoe on the ground with one hand holding the hoe. It's not very hot today, so I came out for a walk. Aunt May nodded and then smiled. Ruruo, you said that you wanted to work last time. There's some progress. Really? Fu Yunruo's eyes lit up, and then she hesitated. But when one is not easy to take care of recently, maybe she was worried about going to work alone. If she left the baby at home, she would definitely be worried and would not be able to stay for an hour. How could she work like that? Could she bring the baby along too? You can bring the child to work. He won't mind. Aunt May waved her hand. It's just that the salary won't be very high. 1,000 yuan a month, including lunch, but you still have to cook lunch yourself. There's no fixed holiday in a month. If you have something to do, you can just apply for leave. 1,000 yuan is enough. Thank you, Aunt May. Fu Yunruo did not mind at all. She knew that in such a remote village, there were basically no job opportunities. Even if there were one or two, there would probably be many people who would be willing to work for a few hundred yuan. Aunt May probably used a lot of favors to help her get this job. Fu Yunruo thought happily. 1,000 yuan a month could buy 2 cans of milk powder, buy cheap toys and 2 sets of clothes for the baby, and also save lunch. Fu Yunruo immediately agreed when she heard that she could bring the child to work. Aunt May saw that Fu Yunruo was purely happy and did not look reluctant at all. She heaved a sigh of relief in her heart. It was good that she did not mind. She was worried that Ruo would be disappointed. She knew that in a big city, a salary of 5,000 to 6,000 yuan was very low. Many white-collar workers only had a salary of tens of thousands of yuan a month. However, she was an old woman in the countryside. There was no place for her to find a job with a salary of tens of thousands of yuan. Even this job was only given after the old man licked his face and asked for it. It was good that she could be of help. Aunt May was happy. She picked up the hoe and said, "All right then, come over early tomorrow morning. I'll bring you there and get you to know the way. I'll go to the field first." Okay. Fu Yunruo replied sweetly, "Thank you, Aunt May." Fu Yunruo was elated. She lowered her head and said happily to the baby who was looking at her with wide eyes, "Aunt May is so nice. We must be filial to Aunt May in the future." She did not have to worry about running out of money anymore. 1,000 yuan was not much. At least, the baby would not have to worry about 2 cans of milk powder a month. Fu Yunruo did not expect Aunt May to really find a job for her. No matter how tiring the job was, she had to persevere. She could not let Aunt May down. Sigh. She was too excited just now and did not think to ask Aunt May what the job was. But it did not matter. She would know tomorrow. Fu Yunruo walked for a while in a happy mood. Then, she turned around and went home. Just as she entered the village, she was stopped by someone. Fu Yunruo looked and saw the village's Aunt Wang walking towards her with a smile. Ruoru. Aunt Wang looked around and saw that there was no one around. Her face immediately bloomed into a chrysanthemum. "Have you considered the matter I mentioned last time?" Fu Yunruo saw Aunt Wang's mysterious look and thought that it was something serious. She did not expect that. Aunt Wang was unwilling to give up. Fu Yunruo said helplessly, "Aunt Wang, I just want to raise the child well. I don't want to consider anything else." "Sigh, you child." Aunt Wang was anxious. "The child can't do without a father. You should find a father before the child can remember anything. Otherwise, the child will not be close to the stepfather. I really don't want to consider it. You don't have to worry. You're a young woman. Life won't be easy for you. If you don't like this one, there are others. I have another one." Auntie Wang was eloquent and introduced Fu Yun to other people. Fu Yun could not get a word in at all. Chi-Wen couldn't take it anymore and yelled angrily. That woman had already said that she didn't want him anymore, so why was she still clinging on to him? Are you bullying her because she's young and doesn't dare to fall out with you? He didn't want a stepfather at all, okay? The baby pooped. I have to change his diaper quickly. Bye, Auntie Wang. Fu Yunruo found an excuse and hurriedly pushed the stroller back home. Auntie Wang could not stop crying from behind. Fu Yun finally got rid of Auntie Wang with great difficulty. She looked like she still had lingering fears. She patted her chest. Fortunately, she had escaped quickly. Fu Yun Ruo bent over and picked up Chi Wan. She grinned and rubbed her face against Chi Win's. Fortunately, we have the baby. The baby is so awesome. Otherwise, Mom will be taken away by the big monster. Chi Wan let her rub her face expressionlessly. She laughed in her heart. Although there was such an episode in the middle that affected her mood a little, she was still very happy. She was going to work tomorrow. Chapter 6. The next day, Fu Yun Ruo was dressed in an ordinary short-sleeved shirt and casual pants. She did not look outstanding, but her pair of straight legs, her figure did not change much, and her outstanding temperament made it seem like she was wearing a high-end dress that cost dozens of yuan. Otherwise, why would there be people who did not mind that she had a child? There were also so many people who asked her about her marriage openly and secretly. Men were very happy to marry such a beautiful daughter. Even if there were conservative elders who had a grudge in their hearts, they could not persuade their own sons. During the new year, many unmarried young people came back, but many people had seen Fu Yun Ruo. Even though Fu Yun Ruo had not been out many times, her appearance and temperament were praised again and again. Many people had seen her in their hearts. Generally speaking, when people heard that a girl was unmarried and had an unknown father, their first impression would definitely be very bad. However, it was difficult for the old or young to have any bad feelings towards Fu Yun Ruo because her temperament was too good, and her eyes were very clear and clean. She did not look like a bad child at all. When she smiled, her smile was very warm, and people who looked at her could not help but feel close to her. In short, Fu Yun Ruo was a very likable girl. At that time, she was still pregnant, so the single young people did not think too much about it. However, recently, when they called home and heard their families talking about finding a partner for her, the unmarried young people were ready to make a move. Those who were willing to lose face asked their relatives and family members to probe her. It could be said that once Fu Yun Ruo nodded, there would probably be young people coming back immediately for a blind date. Fu Yun Ruo carried her son on her back with a sling. She then carried the child's clothes, small towels, small milk bottles, and other things and walked towards Aunt May's house. When she arrived, the May family's courtyard door was open, and she could faintly hear Aunt May's voice. She shouted at the door and pushed the door open after getting a response. Uncle May, Aunt May. Aunt May smiled and said, Ruru, come here. She pointed at a relatively small donkey in the courtyard. In the future, you will ride this donkey to get to work. You can charge it at night. No need. I can buy it myself. Just lend it to me for a day or two. Fu Yun's face turned red. Uncle May and Aunt May had helped her so much. How could she have the nerve to take their things? Moreover, the donkey was considered a rather valuable item in this family. We don't really need it at home. You can use it without worry, Aunt May said casually. All right, let's hurry over before that old fellow nags again. Aunt May pushed another donkey out of the courtyard. This was the car she borrowed from next door. After sending Fu Yun over, she still had to come back. Okay. Fu Yun did not say anything else. She secretly decided that she would go to town to buy a donkey in 2 days. The two of them pushed the donkey out of the yard. Aunt May suddenly asked, Hey, where's your baby carriage? Do you want me to bring it with me? Of course. Why don't you carry it the whole day? The adults are tired, and the children are uncomfortable. Fu Yun thought about it and agreed, so she went back home to bring the car. Then, he rode on the road. Their car drove very slowly. Aunt May still had to teach Fu Yun the way. Fu Yun was learning the way while listening to Aunt May's words. When we get there, you can just call him Uncle Gua. He's of the same generation as me. The old man is 70 years old and has no children. He's a little stubborn. He's from the Gua village in the neighboring town. Your Uncle May's aunt is married to Uncle Gua's youngest uncle. With this layer of relationship, he'll more or less take care of you, so don't worry. He's old and has a bad temper. You should be more tolerant of him. Old man Gua was very powerful when he was young. More than 50 years ago, he was the only university student in the Gua village who passed the exam. After that, he had been mingling outside. Everyone thought that he had made a name for himself. Who would have thought that he would suddenly come back alone 20 years later and spend all his savings to contract a large piece of land? The old man couldn't find out what happened to him outside. He buried his head in the flower field all day long and didn't allow anyone to go in. His temper is very bad. Old man was old. Some time ago, he fainted in the field. If someone didn't pass by and see him, he might have passed away. That's why his family strongly wanted him to take in someone to help him. He despised his nephews for being clumsy. Look, I thought that you, a girl, are very attentive, so I asked your uncle for a chance. We'll go directly to the flower field. When you go there in the future, pay more attention to old Mangua's health. Fu Yun nodded as she looked at the road. This job was much better than she had expected. Wasn't this a flower farmer? Which girl didn't like flowers? Working in such an environment, her mood also became good. The flower field that Aunt May mentioned was not far from the village. It would only take them about 30 minutes to get there if they drove slowly. In the future, when she was familiar with the road, she would drive faster and arrive in 15 minutes. The flower field was at the foot of a mountain and was surrounded by steel wires. From the outside, one couldn't see the inside. Although it was at the foot of the mountain, it wasn't very remote. The flower field was close to the side of the villagers' gathering place. It was about 20 meters away, and there was a red brick house built. They pushed the car and stopped in front of the iron gate with steel wires. Aunt May raised her voice and shouted inside, Old man Gua, come and open the door." A minute later, there was movement inside the door. Not long after, the iron gate opened and an old man with a wrinkled face walked out. He said in a particularly angry tone, "Are you calling for a ghost?" Fu Yun Ruo was shocked and patted her back subconsciously, afraid that the baby would be frightened. Aunt May was not afraid at all. She said in a loud voice, "I've brought her here. You'd better control your bad temper. Don't scare my Ruo." Old man was critical gaze swept over. Fu Yun Ruo quickly smiled. "Hello, Uncle Gua. My name is Yun Ruo." Old man was snorted and looked away. "I'll go back first. Ruo, I'll pick you up tonight." "It's okay, Aunt May. I remember the way." There were many twists and turns in the countryside. Fu Yun Ruo would definitely not get lost if she remembered the turns she took every time. Aunt May was worried. "It's settled then. I'll pick you up at 6. Aunt May said a few words and then left on the donkey. Fu Yun Ruo stood there in a daze. When she saw Uncle Gua turn around and go in, she hesitated for a moment. Old man Gua turned around. "Why aren't you coming in? Are you waiting for me to invite you in?" His tone was still not very good, but he expressed his meaning. Fu Yun Ruo agreed and hurriedly pushed the little donkey in. When she found a place to put the donkey and turned around, Uncle Gua was already gone. Fu Yun Ruo. What was she going to do? Where was she going? Fu Yun Ruo couldn't enter the house casually. She could only put the big bag next to the donkey and the baby carriage on the ground. Then she quickly went to find her. She looked left and right curiously and carefully. She was quite interested in this flower garden that Uncle Gua didn't let other people in. There were many flower seedlings in the potted plant field outside, but Fu Yun Ruo didn't know what kind of flowers they were. In the original body's noble daughter class, there was the skill of picking flowers. However, with such a hypocritical stepmother, how could she really learn it? In the end, wasn't there a rumor that she was an ignorant and incompetent vase girl who only had looks? The mud outside was a little messy. Fu Yun Ruo didn't dare to touch it casually, for fear of mixing things up. Jianlon, Xiaohong, Dendrobium, Chunlon. Some of them had already bloomed. Fu Yun Ruo could recognize some of them, but she couldn't recognize all of them. Fu Yun Ruo thought, could all these flowers and seedlings be varieties of orchids? Did Uncle Gua like orchids so much? Fu Yun Ruo soon saw a big flower shed that was tightly covered. She guessed that Uncle Gua was in the big flower shed. So she carefully called out, "Uncle Gua?" After waiting for a while, there was no response. "Uncle Gua, can I come in?" She poked her head out to look for a while and asked tentatively, "Then I'll come in?" Fu Yun Ruo waited for a while and didn't hear any rejection. She took it as a tacit agreement and slowly walked in. She walked into the house with her heart in her mouth. She glanced around and was stunned by the pots of different and elegant orchids inside. Her heart pounded as she looked at the most dazzling one. Was this a mutated butterfly orchid? She had never seen such a beautiful butterfly orchid before. Her intuition told her that it was worth at least a few million yuan. Looking at the other orchids, she estimated that they were worth hundreds of thousands to a million yuan. Fu Yunruo thought, no wonder Uncle Gua didn't let outsiders enter his flower garden. No one had entered his flower shed before. Fu Yunruo didn't know where to put her hands and feet. She walked very carefully and slowly to Uncle Gua's side. She asked softly, Uncle Gua, what do you need me to do? Uncle Gua was observing a flower seedling with his head lowered. When he heard what she said, he frowned and stared at her for a while. Then he said, just cook lunch for me. Okay, what about me now? Fu Yunruo thought to herself. She came very early. It was only 8 o'clock now. It was still early to cook lunch. You're not allowed to touch my flowers without my permission. You can do whatever you want with the rest of the time. Okay. Fu Yunruo didn't dare to touch it casually. After all, if she accidentally dropped a pot, she couldn't afford to pay for it now. Chapter 7. Fu Yunruo stood in a position where she would not disturb others. She quietly stayed beside Uncle Gua and watched him fiddle with the flowers and plants. Not long after, she felt the baby move behind her. Only then did she remember that she had not fed the baby since she came here. So she said to Uncle Gua, Uncle Gua, I'll go and tidy up the baby. Go ahead, Uncle Gua said impatiently without turning his head. Fu Yunruo hurriedly left the flower shed. The moment she went out, a hot wave of heat hit her in the face. The temperature was much higher than the flower shed. Fu Yunruo was still afraid that the baby could not take it, so she quickly went to the bungalow. At this moment, Fu Yunruo did not care about moving things. She saw a ceiling fan in the living room and quickly turned it on. Then, she untied the baby. Fu Yunruo placed the baby on her lap and touched the baby's body. It was much warmer than usual, but the baby's black eyes were sparkling. He did not look uncomfortable. Fu Yunruo rubbed the baby's tender and smooth little face. The baby is great today. The baby did not cry at all. She was really worried that the baby would cry regardless of the occasion. If Uncle Gua got angry and chased them away, their job would be ruined. The baby was really too sensible. It was rare for the baby to be so obedient. It was as if they had returned to half a month ago. Fu Yunruo was very excited for a moment. She changed the baby's diaper, fed him milk, and placed him in the stroller. She looked at the sunlight outside. It was scorching hot. The road to the flower shed was not far, but Fu Yunruo did not dare to go out with the baby. The baby was only 4 months old. It would be bad if he got a heat stroke. This small bungalow had good insulation. The stuffy heat outside could not seep in. She turned on the ceiling fan and blew it to cool it down. The baby did not cry. He stayed quietly in the stroller and moved his hands and feet from time to time. Fu Yunruo saw that it was not 11 o'clock yet. There was no need to cook for the time being. The baby was so obedient, so she turned on her phone and searched for orchids. She wanted to do this job well, but she could not help much with her little knowledge of orchids. She prepared to make a last-minute effort to see how to get started. Chiwen moved his hands and feet from time to time. His gaze drifted to the woman who was focused on scrolling through her phone. He decided not to mess with this woman for the time being. If she had a job, she should be able to support him, right? However, 1,000 yuan was too little. He still had to save it. When he could walk and talk, he could help to make money. Chiwen thought that if he could earn money early, this woman would have no reason to abandon him, right? Fu Yun carefully identified the complete collection of orchid species on the internet and then prepared to identify the real thing for comparison. Outside the bungalow, potted plants were placed in a mess. There were many green flower seedlings. She identified them nearby so that she could see the baby when she looked up. If anything happened, she could go over in time. Fu Yun thought that she was really too smart. She had found something to do on her own, so she pushed the stroller to the door and fixed it. The temperature here was neither too high nor too low, and it was right under her nose. Baby, mommy is nearby. You have to be good. Fu Yun took a few steps and turned back to look. The baby did not make a fuss, so she squatted down by the side and carefully observed the flower seedlings. Every species of flower seedling had different characteristics. Those who knew would naturally be able to tell at a glance. Fu Yun could distinguish some species based on the shape and color of the flowers, but if she just looked at the flower seedlings, she basically could not distinguish them. She set a goal for herself. She would learn to distinguish 10 species of orchids by today. It was more time-consuming to look up the pictures of the species on the internet based on the real thing. Fu Yun identified them for a long time and finally recognized them. At that moment, she was filled with a sense of accomplishment. Fu Yun wiped the sweat on her forehead. Her entire face was red from the sun. She was in high spirits and was about to continue to identify the next plant when she heard the baby's tender babbling. Fu Yun quickly got up and turned back to the door of the bungalow. Wenwen, what's wrong? Mommy is here. Chiwen angrily slammed the stroller and yelled at the woman. You really make people worry. Can't you see that the sun is so hot outside? You keep being exposed to the sun. Aren't you afraid of getting a heat stroke? I'm sorry, Wenwen baby. Mommy is doing something serious and accidentally neglected you. Baby will definitely forgive Mommy, right? Fu Yun rubbed her face in an attempt to please her. Ah. Chiwen's soft and chubby little hand pressed against her face. Woman, don't rub your sweaty face against me. It's so dirty. The chubby and soft hand touched her face as if it was wiping her sweat. Fu Yun was extremely touched. She pinched the little hand and kissed it a few times. Baby is the best. Chiwen's face was a little red from being kissed. She yelled a few times. Although her heart was filled with disdain, her voice was even sweeter. Fu Yun could not help but kiss her a few more times. Fu Yun checked the baby's diapers. He did not pee, so she did not change his diapers. Then, she interacted with Wenwen for a while. She felt that she had coaxed the baby. Just as she was about to continue working seriously, Chi-Won, who had quietened down, started making noise again. Ah, Chi-Won said. Woman, don't do whatever you want just because you're born beautiful. Just because you can't get tan now doesn't mean that you won't get tanned in the future. If you get tanned a few more times, your face will become charred. No amount of skincare products will be able to recover your skin. You really don't know how to cherish yourself at all. In the end, Fu Yun did not go out to identify the types of orchids. Whenever she went out, Wenwen would make a fuss. She stayed in the house and was very obedient. Although she found it unbelievable, she had a feeling that her baby was feeling sorry for her. Fu Yun was extremely touched. Hence, she decided not to let her baby down. She stayed by his side and tried her best to memorize the common knowledge on her phone. At 11:30 p.m., Fu Yun prepared to make lunch. The kitchen was in the small room on the far right of the small bungalow. Although the room was small, it had everything. There was a counter against one wall. There was an induction cooker, rice cooker, an electric pot on it. There was a small pool beside it. On the other side, there was a square table and a few stools of the same color. In the corner not far from the table, there was a refrigerator and a rice vat. Fu Yun rummaged through the fridge. There was nothing in it. She steamed the rice first, then looked for vegetables. Finally, she found 2 potatoes. She remembered that there was a vegetable field beside the house. Although there were only seedlings, she could still get a vegetable. Fu Yun broke off some lettuce and pulled out a few scallions. She could barely make 2 vegetables. She thought to herself, no wonder Uncle Guo looked so skinny. He ate so vegetarian for 3 meals a day. How could he not be skinny? The potatoes were cut into thin shreds and soaked in water. The vegetables were also washed. Fu Yun looked at them and felt a little conflicted. The vegetables were only delicious when they were just fried. She forgot to ask Uncle Guo when he would come back for lunch. She also didn't have his phone number. The baby couldn't leave her sight. It was the hottest time in the afternoon. She didn't dare to carry him out and walk under the sun. How could she inform Uncle Guo? Fu Yun thought about it and came up with a plan. She hurried to the furthest distance from the small house and shouted at the flower shed, Uncle Guo, it's time to eat. Then, she hurried back. It took less than a minute. Fu Yun was panting. Seeing that the baby didn't cry, she silently praised herself. Not long after, Fu Yun Ruo heard the commotion and looked up. Sure enough, Uncle Guo was walking over. Fu Yun hurriedly said, Uncle Guo, I'll cook 2 dishes. It'll be ready soon. Then, she hurried to cook. Old Man Guo's face was sour. He snorted and was about to speak. Then, he saw a baby staring at him and then showing him a cute, toothless smile. Old man Gua. He didn't say anything, but his face softened unconsciously. Chiwen looked at the old man, who was obviously not easy to get along with. He thought that he had to treat the woman well. So, he took the initiative to smile. Hello, Grandpa Gua. Chiwen waved his little chubby hand at him and greeted him in a friendly manner. Old man Gua turned his head and glanced at him again. He didn't even move his feet, let alone smile and coax him to hug him. It was as if he ignored Chiwen's existence. Chiwen. This old man had a strange temper. He probably didn't like children. He didn't even react to him. This was the first person who was unmoved by him. Fu Yun spent about 10 minutes stir-frying the shredded potatoes and vegetables. Then, she called Uncle Gua to eat. I only found these dishes, so I made some. Fu Yun was a little embarrassed. However, she didn't have the money, so she couldn't cook better. He looked at the 2 dishes on the table and didn't say anything. The 2 of them ate quietly. Fu Yun came out after washing the dishes, but Uncle Gua was nowhere to be seen. Fu Yun guessed that he went to the flower shed again. She wanted to go and take a look, but Wenwen should be drinking milk and taking an afternoon nap now. She hugged Wenwen and coaxed her to sleep. Then, she put her in the stroller and covered her with a thin blanket. The little girl slept soundly and snored happily. Fu Yun narrowed her eyes and continued to do what she didn't finish in the morning. The afternoon passed very quickly. Unknowingly, it was 6 o'clock. Aunt May came to pick them up very punctually. Uncle Gua, we'll go back first. Fu Yun found Uncle Gua and said goodbye. Uncle Gua didn't say anything. He only gave her a bunch of keys and waved his hand impatiently. Let's go. There weren't many keys, only 3. Fu Yun thought that they might be the keys to the main gate and the small bungalow, so she accepted them. She reminded him, I've made dinner. Remember to eat dinner. There was nothing to do in the afternoon. She thought for a while and watered the vegetable field and cooked dinner. After Fu Yun said goodbye to Uncle Gua, she carried the baby and went home with Aunt May. Aunt May smiled and asked, How was your first day at work? Old Gua didn't make things difficult for you, right? No, Uncle Gua is quite a nice person. Although he ignored her the whole day, that's right. Other than cooking a meal, I couldn't help with anything. I didn't do anything for the whole day. Fu Yun felt that she was here to get a salary. She felt embarrassed to take such a small salary. It's only your first day. Take it slow. Besides, that old man treasures his flowers and plants. If he's willing to teach you, he'll teach you. If he's not willing, don't worry about anything else. Just eat lunch. Fu Yun nodded. When she got home, she tidied herself and the baby up. She lay on the bed comfortably and continued to search for information. She wandered around the internet and actually found an orchid lovers forum. She saw that the posts were full of useful information. It was as if she had opened a new world. She read the popular science posts seriously. Chapter 8. Early the next morning, Fu Yun picked a few lettuce from the field, took a winter melon, and went to the pork stall to buy a caddy of pork ribs. She brought the 20 free-range eggs she bought from Aunt May's house last night and rode the donkey to work with the baby on her back. She already knew the way, so she did not ask Aunt May to send her. Today, she rode a little faster and arrived at her destination in 20 minutes. The car stopped in front of the iron gate. She took out her keys and looked at the keyhole. She felt that one of the keys was more suitable, so she used it to open the iron gate. As expected, the door opened. Fu Yun opened the door and pushed the donkey in. She arrived very early. It was only 7 o'clock when she arrived. The later it was, the higher the temperature. In summer, the sun rose early. She woke up early, so she came early. She parked the car and placed the vegetables in the kitchen refrigerator in 2 trips. Fu Yun came out of the kitchen. The moment she entered the living room, her attention was attracted by an extra baby wooden bed. The rectangular wooden bed was about 1.5 meters long and 70 to 80 centimeters wide. It was covered with a thick layer of soft cushions. There were even small pillows and quilts. It looked very new and clean. The bed was surrounded by railings. It was so high that even a 1-year-old baby would not be able to escape. The small wooden bed looked a little old, but it was well maintained and intact. The forelegs were installed with rollers and could still move. This bed wasn't here yesterday. Was it specially found for the baby? Fu Yun could not help but think. She recalled Uncle Gua's attitude towards them yesterday. It could be said that he was very perfunctory and ignored them. Now, it seemed that this was not the case. Uncle Gua walked out of the flower bed. His black boots were still wet with mud. He must have woken up early in the morning to water the flowers. He went to the tap to wash the mud off his shoes and walked into the living room. When he saw Fu Yun staring at the small bed in a daze, he felt uncomfortable for a moment. However, he still said with a straight face, "There are things at home that have accumulated dust. If you need them, use them. If you don't need them, throw them away." "Thank you, Uncle Gua." Fu Yun Ruo turned around and immediately revealed a big smile. "It's useful. When one and I both like it very much." She remembered that Auntie May had said that Uncle Gua had no children. He must have asked someone for this stroller. He had even carefully laid out a set of clean cushions. Fu Yun Ruo was moved. Ever since she came to this place, she had felt too much kindness. All the evil that the original body had encountered felt like it had happened in his previous life. It was too far away. Uncle Gua continued to keep a straight face. He walked to the side and pushed open a door on the right side of the living room. "From now on, you can tidy up your room however you like." Fu Yun walked over and looked at it curiously. The room was very small. There was only a small bed that was 1.8 meters long, a small wardrobe, and a small table. There was a mat on the bed, and curtains were hanging on the glass window. Other than the baby's things that she had left on the table yesterday, there was nothing else. The small house was clean and empty. Fu Yun Ruo was very happy. Uncle Gua looked like he was not easy to get along with, but in fact, he was stubborn and soft-hearted. Seeing that it was not convenient for her to take care of the child here, he had thought of everything for her. She said gratefully, "Uncle Gua, thank you." Uncle Gua did not seem to be used to accepting other people's gratitude. He glanced at the baby behind Fu Yun Ruo and turned to leave. Fu Yun Ruo put the baby down and said happily, "I thought that Uncle Gua was not easy to get along with. I didn't expect him to be so nice." However, she felt that she had to rely on the baby. She had said that her baby was the cutest in the world. How could anyone not like the baby? Fu Yun Ruo finished laughing and placed the baby on the bed. Then, she packed up the baby's things and prepared to tidy them up. Chiwen stretched his limbs and felt very surprised. Yesterday, when he saw the old man's attitude towards him, he thought that he did not like him. He did not expect him to do so much for them silently. Seeing the woman humming happily, Chiwen also felt very happy. Of course, he was happy that he did not have to stay in the pram all the time. This room was obviously for the mother and son to rest in the afternoon. The cabinet was empty, but it was very clean and there was no wormhole. Fu Yun Ruo folded the baby's small clothes and placed them inside. The bottles and cans were placed on the table and the diapers were placed in the drawer. There were not many things, so she quickly packed them up. The room did not look so empty anymore. Fu Yun Ruo turned her head and saw that the baby was entertaining himself on the bed. He seemed to be very happy. She thought for a moment and carried the baby to the small bed in the living room. There was only a mat on the bed here. The bedboard was very hard. She was afraid that the baby would feel uncomfortable if he stayed there for too long. With this bed, it was much more convenient for her. At least she did not have to worry that the baby would fall from the pram if she did not keep an eye on him. Although the baby did not know how to crawl and walk, she did not feel safe leaving him in the pram if she did not keep an eye on him. With this bed, she was very relieved. Sometimes, the baby needed to sleep. Although he would wake up quickly when she was not by his side, he would still sleep for a period of time. She could take this opportunity to do something. At this time, the child was still very energetic. Fu Yun Ruo did not leave. She looked around to find something to do and then found a broom to sweep the floor. The small bungalow was quite big. On the left side of the living room, there was a kitchen and another room. She guessed that it was Uncle Gua's room. On the right side, there were two rooms. One was temporarily used by her, and the other was ajar. There were a lot of miscellaneous things inside. For example, shovels, hose, fertilizers, and other miscellaneous things. She had 3 keys in her hand. One was for the main door, one should be for the small room that she was using now, and the other one was for the main door of the house. Outside the kitchen, there were two small rooms for the bathroom and toilet. On the other side, there was an iron staircase that led to the roof. She went up to take a few glances. The roof was filled with potted plants. Some of the stepped potted plants were empty. Some of the seedlings were green, and a few of them had bloomed. Fu Yunruo found that the baby had become obedient again. She did not have to carry him all day long and did not make a fuss. It was just that every time she sneaked out to identify the varieties of orchids, she would be summoned back soon. It was not yet 12 o'clock when Uncle Gua suddenly came out of the flower shed. Fu Yunruo was still very surprised when she saw him. She said embarrassedly, "Uncle Gua, I haven't finished cooking yet." She thought that when she was almost done cooking, she would call him and come back to eat. She had made winter melon and pork rib soup, but it was not done yet. Old Man Gua's expression was indifferent. He grunted, but she could not tell if he was angry or not. Fu Yunruo could not wait any longer. She said, "Uncle Gua, help me look after one. I'm going to cook." Then, Fu Yunruo ran to the kitchen. Chi Wan, who was lying on the small bed, looked at Old Man Gua with wide eyes. Thinking that he had specially gotten this small bed and even gave them a room to live in, he revealed an innocent smile. Yeah, Chi Wan was a person who knew how to be grateful. He always remembered the kindness that others had shown him. He was a person who could distinguish between kindness and hatred. Old Man Gua stood by the small bed and watched. He did not say a word, and there was no smile on his face. If he was not sure that he liked him, Chi Wan would have thought that he did not like children. Usually, when children saw such a strange old man, they would probably be scared to the point of crying, right? Chi Wan accepted his kindness, so he naturally would not be scared. He waved his fat hands and feet to express that he did not mind being hugged. After Fu Yunruo entered the kitchen and saw that the pork rib soup was almost done, she quickly stir-fried some lettuce and brought it to the table. She set the bowls and chopsticks and went to the living room to call for someone. What she saw was her son dancing excitedly on the small bed. Uncle Gua, who was standing at the side, was very stiff, as if he was at a loss. Fu Yunruo could not help but laugh. She walked forward and picked up the baby. When one likes Uncle Gua very much, she gently waved the baby's little chubby hand. "Isn't that right, Wen?" Ah. The baby made two sounds as if he was responding. Fu Yunruo's eyes curved. "Uncle Gua, it's time to eat." Old Man Gua did not say anything. He snorted lightly and turned to the dining table. Fu Yunruo put the baby in the stroller and pushed the stroller to the dining table. Old Man Gua did not say anything when he saw the pot of pork rib soup. When it was time to get off work, he gave Fu Yunruo 1,000 yuan in cash and said that it was for this month's food expenses. He even said in a bad tone, "Lunch is included. I can afford it." Fu Yunruo accepted it good-naturedly. She thought for a while and asked, "Uncle Gua, can I come later tomorrow?" Fu Yunruo was a little embarrassed to postpone work after only 2 days of work. In fact, Uncle Gua did not specify the working hours. She did not think it was a big deal if she came early, but she had to tell him if she came late. "I want to go to town tomorrow to buy something." Uncle Gua said lightly, "Up to you." Fu Yunruo knew that he had agreed and left happily. Fu Yunruo went to town first and bought a small donkey. 2,000 yuan was a lot of money to her now. She felt a little pain to spend it, but it was necessary. She could not always use Aunt May's money. Then, she went to the grocery store to buy a set of mattresses, quilts, and other bedding. She went to the street to buy some fruits, some seasonings, and half a kilogram of lean meat. The prices in town were relatively low. 1,000 yuan was enough for lunch. Fu Yunruo decided that if she was free in the afternoon, she would also cook dinner. There were vegetables in the flower bed. Her old house also had melons and vegetables. She mainly bought seasonings, meat dishes, and fruits that were not available in the flower bed. It was good for the elderly to eat more fruits. Fu Yunruo was like a little hamster. She moved a little today and moved a little tomorrow. Soon, the small room was decorated warmly and comfortably. The kitchen was also full of things, and the refrigerator was full. When baby's territory in the living room had also increased. Other than the small moving bed, there was also a corner in the living room. It was covered with a floor mat and many toys for the baby to play with. Of course, This was not made by Fu Yunruo. The baby's things were all bought by Uncle Guo. Fu Yunruo could tell that Uncle Guo liked Wenwen very much. The way he expressed his love was to give her some small toys from time to time. Fu Yunruo wanted to say a few words, but he still insisted on doing it. After half a month, Fu Yunruo, her son, and Uncle Guo got along well with each other, and their days became more regular. Every day, they would arrive before 7:30 a.m. When baby would stay on the small bed or the floor mat. He would eat at 12 o'clock a.m. sharp. Uncle Guo would usually be back before 12 o'clock a.m. When Fu Yunruo was cooking, he would stay in the living room to look after the baby. Although he would still watch from the side and rarely carry the child, the baby would become familiar with Uncle Guo and would not make trouble. At 6 o'clock a.m., Fu Yunruo would bring the child back to the old house and occasionally chat with the neighbors. At the same time, her knowledge of orchids slowly increased. Uncle Guo saw that she often observed the flower seedlings, but he did not say anything. It was as if he had completely forgotten that he had once said that she was not allowed to touch the flowers without his permission. Fu Yunruo took an inch and wanted a mile and slowly studied it. On this day, she fiddled with an orchid plant and felt that this orchid plant was sick. After thinking for a while, she carried the potted plant and asked Uncle Guo, "Uncle Guo, this orchid plant feels strange. Could there be a problem?" Uncle Guo was a few meters away from her. He looked at the potted plant that Fu Yunruo carried over. He took it and observed it for a moment before returning it to Fu Yunruo. "What's the problem?" There was no problem? Then her judgment was wrong. Fu Yunruo blushed. "It's good that there's no problem." Old man Guo glanced at her. "What do you think is the problem?" Fu Yunruo blushed and said, "I just felt that the color of the leaves changed, so I thought there was a problem." Recently, she had been observing these potted plants often. It was not her first day studying this potted plant, but she felt that it had changed a little. It was indeed an illusion. If Fu Yunruo showed off in front of Master Guan, she would be so ashamed that she could not wait to hide in a crack and run away. "What's the problem?" Uncle Guo's tone was unreadable. Fu Yunruo braced herself and said, "Maybe the root system is a little damaged." She crammed her knowledge every night and specially studied the signs and symptoms of the disease of orchids. If the leaves at the root suddenly turned dark brown, it should be a sign that there was a problem at the root. "Okay, you can go and deal with it." After Uncle Guo finished speaking, he turned and walked towards the flower shed, leaving Fu Yunruo holding the potted plant in a daze. What did this mean? Fu Yunruo was stunned for a long time before she reacted. Did Uncle Guo mean that her judgment was not wrong? Let her deal with it? But she did not know how to. Chapter 9. Fu Yunruo had a bitter expression on her face as she carried the potted plant to the little cottage. She stared at it for a long time and felt like she did not know where to start. However, this was the task that Uncle Guo had given her. What if she did not do it and Uncle Guo felt that she was not up to the job and fired her? She was very satisfied with this job. To be safe, Fu Yunruo went to her phone to check all kinds of information again. That was not all. She thought about it and even went to the orchid lovers' communication forum to post a request for help. Fortunately, the orchid lovers were very enthusiastic and told her the steps to treat the root of the disease. Fu Yunruo confirmed it again and again and prepared all the necessary things before she decided to do it. She carefully removed the plant from the pot, shook off the soil on the root system, and then found the root of the disease. Sure enough, there was a little rotten root system. Fortunately, it was found in time, and it was only a little. After she cut it out and confirmed that there was no problem, she disinfected it and transplanted it into a new pot. After everything was done, she heaved a sigh of relief and wiped her sweat. Next, she would see the effect. She hoped that everything would go smoothly. For the next 5 days, Fu Yunruo focused all her attention on this potted plant. After seeing that the orchids had obviously improved, she handed it to Uncle Guo to check the results. After Uncle Guo checked it, he was very satisfied. It was rare for him to nod his head and give her an affirmation. He even gave her a smile. Not bad. Fu Yunruo was flattered. She had been here for so long, but this was the first time she had received a smile from Uncle Guo. He even praised her. Fu Yun Ruo's mood at this moment was like when she was young and was praised by the teacher in school. She was so happy that she almost flew. Since then, Uncle Guo would guide Fu Yun Ruo whenever he was free. Fu Yun Ruo was ecstatic at first, but later, she eagerly absorbed more knowledge. She realized that the theoretical knowledge that she learned online for 10 days to half a month was not as beneficial as Uncle Guo's 30 minutes of guidance. After Fu Yun Ruo found that Uncle Guo was very tolerant of her in the field of orchids, she often shamelessly went to learn. Because Uncle Guo stayed in the flower shed all day and the temperature in the flower shed was relatively constant, Fu Yun Ruo would occasionally carry her baby and study by the side. Fu Yun Ruo only realized the passage of time when she suddenly saw one baby sitting up on the small bed. Ah, my son knows how to sit. She calculated the time and realized that the baby was already 6 months old. Fu Yun felt that she had neglected the baby during this period of time and felt guilty, so she spent more time by the baby's side. It just so happened that Uncle Guo had given her a basic handbook. She could read more and memorize it. If she didn't understand it, she could ask for advice. Therefore, when the baby was sleeping at the side, Fu Yun was reading at the side. Halfway through, she suddenly heard movement. Fu Yun Ruo stood up doubtfully and walked outside. Indeed, she heard some movement at the metal gate. She walked over. Who is it? Hello, I'm looking for Teacher Guo. Fu Yun was answered by a middle-aged man's voice. She looked outside and saw a man in a suit standing outside the iron fence. The man gave Fu Yun a friendly smile. My name is Chi Weicheng. Her eyes were a little surprised. This person obviously came from a big city outside. He was a very handsome man who looked to be in his early 30s. However, she did not open the door. Instead, she said, I'll go and ask Uncle Guo. Fu Yun Ruo had been working here for so long. Other than the Guo family who came to take a look and send some rice and vegetables, no one else had come. This was the first time a foreigner had come to look for Uncle Guo. Fu Yun Ruo was quite curious. This person called Uncle Guo as a teacher. Was Uncle Guo a teacher in the past? She went to the flower shed to find Uncle Guo and said, Uncle Guo, there's a person called Chi Weicheng outside looking for you. When Uncle Guo heard this name, he immediately frowned. What is he doing here? He was obviously in a bad mood. Fu Yun Ruo leaned on the door and asked, Do you want him to come in? Uncle Guo said impatiently, Let him in. Let him stay by himself. Hurry up and send him away. Fu Yun Ruo understood what he meant. Then I'll go and open the door. Remember to come over. Fu Yun Ruo hurriedly ran to open the door. Sorry for the wait. That person had been waiting outside the door. When he heard Fu Yun Ruo's words, he said, I took the liberty to disturb you. The moment Chi Weicheng saw Fu Yun Ruo, he was stunned. He had never seen such a beautiful woman before. Previously, he had caught a glimpse of her and thought that she was already stunning enough. He never knew that such an outstanding woman existed in such a remote village. Which junior of his teachers was this? Chi Weicheng entered the door and smiled at Fu Yun Ruo in a friendly manner. Fu Yun Ruo could not help but return a smile. She had not seen such a graceful person in a long time. She was a little surprised. Fu Yun Ruo led him to the living room and invited him to take a seat. She then served him a cup of tea. Chi Weicheng had rushed over and was a little thirsty. After drinking half a cup of tea, he spoke to Fu Yun Ruo warmly. I didn't see you the last time I came over. Are you teacher's niece? No, I'm not. Fu Yun Ruo waved her hand. I'm here to work. My name is Yun Ruo. She introduced herself and then asked curiously, Mr. Chi, are you Uncle Guo's student? Yes, he was my teacher when I was in university. He could not help but laugh when he said that. But as far as I know, Uncle Guo went back to his hometown 20 years ago. You're only around 30 years old. Could it be that this person went to university when he was 10 years old? Fu Yun Ruo's eyes were filled with suspicion. Chi Weicheng could not help but laugh. I'm already 40 years old, young lady. Fu Yun Ruo. She really could not tell that he took such good care of himself. I'm sorry. Fu Yun Ruo was embarrassed by her own suspicion. It's okay. I'm very happy that you praised me for being young. Chi Weicheng did not mind at all. According to age, you should call me uncle. But since you call teacher uncle, then I'll be thick-skinned and call you brother Chi since we're of the same generation. Brother Chi Fuyun Rua called out and then explained, Uncle Gua is in the flower shed. He'll be here soon. Chi Weiqing nodded. He did not mind being neglected at all. He understood his teacher's temper very well. He calmly chatted with Fuyun Rua. After talking for a while, his occupational habit kicked in and he could not help but ask, Yun Rua, have you ever thought of entering the entertainment industry? Fuyun Rua did not react for a moment. To be honest, your appearance is very good. If you enter the entertainment industry, you'll definitely be very popular. If there's a chance, you'll definitely soar to the sky. But I don't know anything. You can learn if you don't know anything. Chi Weiqing took out a business card. I'm a manager under Apple Entertainment. Our company has always treated its artists very well. If you sign with our company, I can definitely make you into a super A-list celebrity who's even more popular than Feng Shui Rua. Feng Shui Rua? Fuyun Rua's eyes moved. She had not heard this name from others for a long time. She knew about Apple Entertainment. It was the only entertainment giant that even Orange Entertainment, where the male and female leads were from, could not shake. Apple Entertainment's ability to create stars was very strong. They had created countless veteran best actors and best actresses. However, in recent years, Feng Shui Rua had been very aggressive. A group of female stars had been suppressed and could not make a name for themselves. Because of Feng Shui Rua, Orange Entertainment had become one of the three giants in the entertainment industry. They had even faintly suppressed the other giant, Mango Entertainment. Fortunately, Apple Entertainment had an unshakable best actor, CU. Otherwise, even Apple Entertainment would have to avoid the limelight. Chi Weiqing spared no effort in persuading her. He had always had a good eye for people. He saw hope in Fuyun Rua that could surpass Feng Shui Rua. To be honest, Fuyun Rua was very tempted. However, it was only for a moment. She thought of the curse that was pressing on her body. She did not want to appear in front of the male and female leads until the 2-year period of her death. It was fine to say that she was timid and afraid. She already had a son. She had to protect him well. Outside, she could not even protect herself, let alone others. Fuyun Rua had a feeling that as long as this period of time passed, everything would be fine. Sorry, I'm not interested in the entertainment industry. Are you worried that the entertainment industry is too complicated? You don't have to worry about that. Apple Entertainment is your biggest support. As long as you don't want to do something, no one can force you. I naturally believe in Brother Chi. Fuyun Rua's eyes curved. But I have to raise my son. I can't leave. Moreover, the fact that I have a son is not suitable for me to develop in the entertainment industry, right? Fuyun Rua picked up baby Wenwan, who had woken up at some point in time. She waved her chubby little hand at Chi Weiqing. Chi Weiqing was dumbfounded. He only saw the baby's crib at the side. He did not notice that there was a child under the mosquito net. And this child belonged to the little girl in front of him? Wenwan, this is Uncle Chi, come and say hello to Uncle Chi. The 6-month-old child was carried vertically. One of his chubby little hands was gently pinched by Fuyun Rua. She waved at Chi Weiqing. The little guy's skin was fair and soft. His little face was chubby. His big eyes were like black glass. He was a cute child. Chi Weiqing subconsciously reached into his pocket. But he did not expect to meet a child here. He did not bring a gift. He could not take out the 200 to 300 yuan in cash in his wallet. So he smiled awkwardly. This little guy is very cute. He secretly decided to make up for the gift tomorrow. Fuyun Rua seemed to have been praised. She smiled very happily. Thank you. Cough. No matter what, I still hope that you will consider it. I won't let you lose out. Before Fuyun Rua could answer, Uncle Gua's voice sounded. What nonsense are you talking about again? Teacher. Chi Weiqing immediately greeted him respectfully. Don't call me teacher. Who is your teacher? Old man Gua's gaze was unfriendly. What are you doing here again? I'm here to see you. How have you been recently? Did you go for checkups on time? Before Chi Weiqing could finish, Old man Gua interrupted him harshly. I won't die. Fuyun Rua looked at this and that. She was very curious. Chi Weiqing's tone was helpless. No matter what, you have to take care of your body. I'm here this time to bring you to the city for a checkup. No matter what, the medical equipment in the city is more advanced. Old man Gua did not appreciate it at all. You're not here just for this, right? Chi Weiqing smiled bitterly. I really can't hide it from you. I want to buy a pot of orchids. Old man Gua flatly refused. Not for sale. Chi Weiqing said, Teacher, listen to me first. This time, the employer is willing to pay 10 times the price. You have to spend money to maintain the operation of this flower garden. The price you sell one pot of orchids is equivalent to selling 8 or 10 pots. You won't lose out. Old man Gua's tone was sarcastic. Sell it to your employer and then destroy the orchids that I painstakingly cultivated? Chi Weiqing. He had nothing to say. Old man Gua started to chase him away. Not for sale means not for sale. Get out, get out. Chi Weiqing could only walk out as he said, then it's settled. I'll take you to the city hospital tomorrow. Chi Weiqing had already been chased away. Fu Yunruo could only vaguely hear some voices behind him. In the end, she could not hear anything at all. When Uncle Gua came back, he was still cursing. Bastard! Fu Yunruo looked at the business card in her hand. She hesitated for a moment before putting it away. Chi Yunruo was stunned. He was immersed in his own thoughts. He did not expect to see a woman talking and laughing with a man when he woke up today. What made him feel like he was struck by lightning was that this person's surname was Chi. Chi was his surname in the future. Was there a connection? The director of the orphanage had the surname Chi. He had always thought that he followed the director's surname. Maybe that was not the case? This person was also an agent of Apple Entertainment. Chi Weiqing? He remembered that this man would completely disappear from the entertainment industry in 5 years because he offended Feng Shuiruo and was exposed to drug abuse. He remembered because this man was his manager's idol, and he had always told him that his idol had been framed. Was this man the woman's final choice? Fu Yunruo did not know about her son's fluctuating thoughts. She returned home. When it was bedtime, she was still thinking absent-mindedly as she coaxed the baby to sleep. Ever since she had a job, she did not pay attention to the entertainment industry and the big family. Now that she suddenly mentioned it again and even met someone from the entertainment industry, she thought a lot. However, it was useless to think too much. It was safer to stay here. She could not enter the entertainment industry at this stage. The entertainment industry was now the world of the male and female leads. Wouldn't she be digging her own grave if she entered it? Unless she found the backing of the only person who could make them avoid the limelight. See you. However, even if she signed with Apple Entertainment, there was no guarantee that the big actor from the same company would protect a small fry like her. How could an invisible person like her find a backing? Why would he notice an invisible person like her? Forget about it. Fu Yunruo suddenly thought that if she did not enter the entertainment industry, she could try live streaming. Perhaps it was because this world was based on the entertainment industry. The entertainment industry was very developed, and live streaming was a very popular industry. Some very famous live streamers were almost as famous as A-list celebrities. However, such live streamers were very rare. There were many types of live streaming. She could live stream without showing her face. Perhaps she could even earn some money. This was very suitable for her now. A salary of 1,000 yuan was not enough to save money. If she had a small illness or disaster, she would not even be able to pay for the medical bills. Earn money. Fu Yunruo was shamelessly tempted. However, the content of the live stream was a problem. Chapter 10. Chiwen did not sleep well that night. He fell into a gray dream and could not break free no matter how hard he tried. He struggled for a long time before he finally broke free from the nightmare and opened his eyes. He stared blankly at the empty space and was immersed in a depressed mood. He did not remember what he dreamed of. He only remembered how he felt at that time. Fear, uneasiness, fear. He did not want to cry, but a baby's tear ducts were not controlled by humans. Fu Yun had just fallen asleep not long ago when she suddenly felt movement beside her. Before she opened her eyes, she reached out her hand to comfort him. Wen, what's wrong? Hearing the child's short cries, Fu Yun instantly woke up. She took a closer look and saw Wen's face was red. Tears rolled down from the corners of his eyes, and he was sobbing. She quickly carried the child up and got off the bed. She paced back and forth and coaxed him. Oh, don't cry, don't cry. She quickly changed his diapers and made milk powder, but no matter how she fed him, he refused to drink it. Instead, he cried even louder. Is the baby feeling unwell somewhere? Fu Yun was anxious. She gently rubbed his little tummy. Is the baby's tummy uncomfortable? Mommy will rub it for you. It hurts. The crying stopped for a moment. He looked at Fu Yun with his big wet eyes. She had just heaved a sigh of relief when the next moment, a shocking cry sounded. Hearing this woman's gentle voice, Chi-Wen felt even more wronged. Perhaps it was because of the nightmare. He broke down his psychological barrier and could not help but cry out loud. He recalled the days when he was hungry in the orphanage and fought with other children over a steamed bun. When he was 12 or 13 years old, he heard that the entertainment industry was making money. He ran to the film studio to be a low-level actor and was bullied because he was young and had no background. Since she was destined to abandon him, why was she so good to him? Why was she so good to him? Why was she so good to him? Why was she so reluctant to leave him? If you don't want me, I don't want you either. If you don't want me, I don't want you either. Chi-Wen's cries were heart-wrenching. Her small hands tightly grasped Fu Yun Ruo's hair and refused to let go. Her tear-stained face was bright red, and her childish cries turned from loud to hoarse. Fu Yun tried to coax him for a long time, but to no avail. When she heard her son's cries, her nose turned sour and tears streamed down her face. Baby, don't cry. Mummy is here. Fu Yun coaxed as she cried. Don't be afraid. Sob. Baby, don't be afraid. When Aunt May came over, she saw two teary eyes, one big and one small. Wen's baby had been very quiet and obedient ever since he was born. He rarely cried. So when Aunt May saw that Fu Yun could be brought over alone, she would only occasionally lend a hand. Aunt May was also shocked by the sudden crying in the middle of the night and faintly heard it. She quickly got up to check on the situation. Aunt May, sob. The baby is crying. What should we do? Fu Yun looked helpless and asked for help. What should we do? Sob, it's okay. Let me take a look. It's normal for children to cry in the middle of the night. Don't panic. Aunt May wanted to carry the child over to take a look, but she did not expect that the moment she did so, the baby would cry even louder. Afraid that the baby would cry until his throat was damaged, Aunt May could only instruct from the side. Ruoa, change your posture and carry him like this. Oh. Fu Yun Ruo had a backbone and quickly adjusted her posture according to Aunt May's instructions. She carried the baby vertically and pressed his small body tightly against her. Hoo fur, you won't be scared. Aunt May stroked her back and gently comforted her. Fu Yun Ruo quickly copied her. Hoo fur, you won't be scared. Mummy is here. Baby, don't be afraid. Fu Yun Ruo stopped crying and paced back and forth while carefully comforting her. She did not know if it was effective, but not long after, when Wen's cries gradually stopped. Her small throat was still sobbing, and there were still tears hanging from her eyelashes. Fu Yun Ruo touched her small face. It was ice cold. Come and wipe Wen's face for her. While Fu Yun Ruo was comforting the baby, Aunt May did not stay idle. She filled a basin with clean hot water, washed a small towel, and handed it to Fu Yun Ruo. Fu Yun Ruo wiped Wen's face and neck, and she also wiped her small hands. She touched the baby's back. The little guy was sweating from crying, so she quickly wiped her body and changed into a small set of clothes. Come and drink some water. Aunt May handed over a small milk bottle in time. There was some warm water that was just right for the baby to drink. Fu Yun Ruo put the pacifier in the baby's mouth, and he was willing to drink it now. His red and soft little mouth gurgled, and his eyes, which had been washed by tears, were even more clear. He held the milk bottle with one hand, and the other hand was tightly holding the ends of Fu Yun Ruo's hair. Her heart was about to melt. When baby gurgled, and his eyelids slowly closed. After a while, he stopped moving. Fu Yun Ruo waited for a while before she took the milk bottle away. She leaned over to give the baby a kiss, and then carefully lay down beside the baby. Aunt May poured away the water in the basin, tidied up the things, and then said softly, I'll go back first? Fu Yun Ruo turned her head and said softly to her, Aunt May, why don't you sleep with us? It's so late, don't go back. It's too troublesome. Then she said, if Wen Ruo cries again, I won't feel safe if you're not here. No, Wen Ruo won't cry again. Although she said that, Aunt May stayed. She tidied up a little and then slept inside. The bed was very big, and it was more than enough for 2 adults and a child to sleep. Aunt May said gently, "Sleep, I'm here." "Okay." Fu Yun Ruo replied with a nasal voice, and then closed her eyes. However, she did not feel sleepy for a while. From the time the baby was born until now, this was the first time Fu Yun Ruo saw the baby crying hysterically. She was very concerned and sad. Wenwen rarely cried. Even if there was a period of time when she liked to make trouble, she did not cry. Occasionally, she would cry, but it was just a symbolic cry and she would stop crying after a while. It was unlike tonight, when her crying made her heart ache. She was worried about it, so she did not sleep well for the rest of the night. When she suddenly woke up, Aunt May was no longer in bed. She lay down for a while, but her mind was still not clear. For a moment, she did not know what time it was. She heard a slight movement outside. Just as she was about to get up, a tuft of her hair was still in Wenwen's hand. Wenwen slept with her limbs spread out. Her little chubby hands were clenched tightly, and she was even snoring. She touched Wenwen's little face. It was normal body temperature, and her mood was slightly relieved. After thinking about it, she continued to lie down. But soon, there was movement beside her. Fu Yun Ruo looked up and saw Wenwen's eyelids moving. She blinked her eyes and quickly focused. "Ah!" He looked at Fu Yun Ruo. Her little voice was soft and tender, and it was not affected by last night's crying at all. Fu Yun Ruo lowered her head and rubbed his little face. "Little rascal, Ada." "Ah." Chiwen danced and said something that no one could understand. Perhaps it was because he had vented last night, but Chiwen's mood was much better. He was much more indifferent to the fact that he would be abandoned in the end, and he was no longer depressed. He thought that since he had memories, he had already remembered the name of this woman's house. Even if he was abandoned in the future, he could still run back. When he grew up and earned a lot of money, he would throw a lot of money in front of her and let her cry bitterly and repent for abandoning him back then. At that time, the choice and initiative would be in his hands. Fu Yun Ruo did not know what her son was thinking. She saw that the baby was very energetic, so she carried the baby and walked out of the room. Aunt May was in the kitchen. When she saw Fu Yun Ruo and her son coming out, she smiled and said, Ruo, I've made breakfast. Remember to eat when you get up." "Okay, thank you, Aunt May." Fu Yun Ruo smiled. She had also cried for a long time last night. At this moment, her eyes were still a little red and swollen, and she looked very delicate. "Come, let me carry one." Aunt May carefully took it. Seeing that he did not reject it this time, her face immediately bloomed into a smile. "You little sweetheart." Fu Yun Ruo went to wash up. Aunt May smiled and helped Wenwen wash up. Fu Yun Ruo looked at the breakfast Aunt May made. She had made a pot of soft and fragrant millet porridge. She took out 2 bowls and held them out. "Aunt May, come and eat." Fu Yun Ruo went into the room to feed the baby. After she was full, the millet porridge was almost dry. She placed the baby in the stroller and watched from the side. Then, she spoke to Aunt May. "Aunt May, why is Wenwen crying so hard?" She still could not let go. "He's not hungry, nor is he feeling unwell. This is very normal. Other than feeling unwell, children will also cry when they are shocked. In my opinion, Wenwen was shocked, causing him to feel insecure. Children don't know how to speak, so he cried." "Shocked?" Fu Yun Ruo blinked. "Did Wenwen have a nightmare?" "Maybe. Let's see if he'll be like this tonight. If he still cries, I'll help you take a look." "Okay. Sorry to trouble you, Aunt May. Are you going to the flower garden today?" "Yes." Fu Yun Ruo hesitated for a moment. Yesterday, Brother Chi said that he was going to bring Uncle Gua for a physical examination. She still did not know the situation. She could not leave the flower garden alone. Fu Yun Ruo confirmed. "Is Wenwen all right?" "He's fine. Don't worry." Only then did Fu Yun Ruo feel at ease. After breakfast, she bid farewell to Aunt May and rode her little donkey to work. When she and the baby arrived at the flower garden, Uncle Gua was still there. Chi Weicheng had also arrived early. He was still wearing a suit, but he was instructed by Uncle Gua to water the flowers, fertilize the fertilizer, and take care of the flowers and plants. Fu Yun Ruo looked at his orderly movements and was very surprised. Wasn't this a manager? He actually knew how to take care of the flowers and plants? Yunruo, you're here. Chi Weicheng smiled and greeted her. Fu Yunruo was prepared to put Wenwan on the small bed to help Chi Weicheng. She did not expect Wenwan to be unusually clingy to her today. Once she carried her and put her down, her small body was like soft noodles. Her two chubby little feet refused to touch the ground, and her small hands and feet touched her body softly. Fu Yunruo did not succeed in putting Wenwen down a few times, so she could only carry her and watch Chi Weicheng work not far away. Chi Weicheng suddenly thought of something. He put down the work he was doing and went out. When he came back, he was holding a small car. This is my greeting gift to Wenwen. I was in too much of a hurry yesterday, so I have to make it up to you today. Chi Weicheng smiled as he handed it over. It was obvious that this was a high-end toy car from a big brand. Fu Yun hurriedly refused. You're spending too much money. It's good that you're sincere. How can I accept such an expensive gift? This is my gift to the child. You must accept it. Besides, I've already bought it. It would be a waste if you don't accept it. You can give it to the kids at home too. I'm not married yet. Chi Weicheng laughed. Fu Yun could only accept it on behalf of her child. Thank you, Brother Chi. Then he placed the toy in front of Wenwen and said softly to Wenwen, Come. Wenwen thanks Uncle Chi. Chi-Wen looked at the little cart, then looked at it again. Then, he pushed it with his chubby hands and shouted fiercely at Chi Weicheng. Ah! Don't even think about buying him over with a mere toy. Chapter 11. Fu Yun had never expected that her obedient and sensible son would suddenly be so impolite. If she wasn't wrong, the baby was hostile to Brother Chi, but why? She thought that Chi Yang was quite a nice person. Fu Yun smiled awkwardly and said, Wenwen has always been very obedient. Maybe it's because she didn't sleep well last night that she's a little grumpy. Children are very cute. Chi Weicheng actually didn't like children. He felt that children were mischievous and difficult to raise. But at this moment, seeing this little brat baring his fangs and brandishing his claws at him, he felt that it was very interesting. Even that frowning little eyebrows and that fierce little voice made him very happy. He couldn't help but reach out to hold little Fatty's hand. Unsurprisingly, he was waved away. He thought that he looked very fierce when he frowned, but in fact, when his puffy cheeks trembled, he looked especially cute, so cute that it made people's hearts melt. Chi Weicheng's smile deepened. He felt that this child was very much to his liking, and he didn't know if it was an illusion, but he felt that this child looked a little familiar, but he couldn't remember where he had seen him before. Fu Yun was quite happy to see her son being so lively, so she did not stop the two of them from interacting. Chi Weicheng teased the child for a while before he reluctantly withdrew his hand. Then, he went out to continue tending to the orchids. Seeing this, Fu Yun wanted to help, but the child was too clingy. She put the baby on the small bed with great difficulty. Just as she was about to step out of the door, she was called back by Ya. Fu Yun tried a few times, but she could not step out of the door of the living room. Chi-Wen sat on the small bed and stared at Fu Yunruo unhappily. They hadn't even confirmed their relationship yet, but she was already abandoning her son to follow that man. He wasn't willing to see them go off to spend time alone and leave him behind. If Fu Yun knew her son's inner thoughts, she would definitely not know whether to laugh or cry. She really did not have those messy thoughts. Chi Weicheng was a good person, but she really did not have those thoughts. Moreover, he didn't seem to have any thoughts about her. She just felt that it was her job, and it wasn't right to let others do it for her. Fu Yunruo spent the entire morning around this little ancestor. At noon, she made a sumptuous lunch. She made a bowl of minced pork and egg soup for Wenwen. A 6-month-old baby could already be fed some supplementary food. Fu Yun specially learned a lot of nutritious baby meals and made different dishes for Wenwen. Ever since Wenwen was given supplementary food, he especially liked it. He liked it even more than milk. Basically, he was not willing to drink breast milk anymore. If Fu Yun thought about it, other people's babies might need a process to be weaned, and the babies would even cry and make a fuss. Her family did not have this worry at all. If Fu Yun had not heard from an experienced elder that the best time to wean a child was 8 months old, and the child was completely weaned between 1 year old and 1.5 weeks old, Wenwan would have started weaning at 6 months old. During this period of time, she would occasionally feed him, but the frequency had decreased. She would only feed him once or twice a day. At noon, Chi Weicheng stayed for lunch. Uncle Guo's expression was still ugly, but he would pay attention to Chi Weicheng. Not long after lunch, Uncle Guo bluntly asked Chi Weicheng to go to work. He went to take an afternoon nap. Fu Yunruo also took the child to take an afternoon nap. After coaxing Wenwan asleep, Fu Yunruo thought about it and put her phone to the side. Then, she made a call with another phone. This was a method that she had thought of previously. Uncle Guo did not ask her to work at any time, but she was paid. It was not good to take care of the child and not do anything. Children were more sleepy, so she wanted to do some work while Wenwan was sleeping. It was fine near the house. She could notice the movements in the house at any time, but if she was far away, she could not hear anything. So she thought of a method. For this reason, she specially bought an old phone that cost 100 yuan. She placed the phone on the table. Both sides were constantly on the phone, so she could pay attention to the child's movements at any time. She did not have many opportunities to do this, and the free phone call time every month was enough. At least, the effect of doing this before was quite good. This time, after coaxing Wenwan asleep, she did this again. Then, she hurried over. She was really embarrassed to be so heartless and wait to sleep while others were working. When Fu Yunruo arrived at the flower shed, Chi Weicheng was fiddling with a potted plant. When he saw Fu Yunruo coming over, he smiled very amiably. Fu Yunruo also took the tools over and looked for work to do. But after looking for a long time, it seemed that there was nothing for her to do. Currently, the only thing that needed to be done was the pot of orchids in front of Chi Weicheng. She said, "Brother Chi, why don't you rest for a while and let me do it?" "No need. I'm almost done." Fu Yunruo could only stand not far from Chi Weicheng and watch him trim the leaves of the orchids. She could not help but sigh. "Brother Chi, you know so much." Actually, she was quite embarrassed. Chi Weicheng had done all her work. "I majored in plant science in university. My teacher was my mentor," Chi Weicheng said with a smile. Fu Yunruo blinked her eyes in surprise and sighed. "Then your specialization is a little too big." A plant science major actually went to the entertainment industry to be an agent, and he seemed to be doing very well. "There's no other way. Although I majored in this major, I'm really not cut out for it, so I changed my profession." Chi Weicheng was a little helpless. One situation was really unpredictable. Back then, he chose this major because he was interested in these things, but he really did not have the talent. Moreover, he was a layman. He wanted to earn more money and live a good life. He used to envy his teachers and classmates. Some of them specialized in cultivating rare herbs. Once they cultivated them, it was not a problem to become rich overnight. But the prerequisite was that they had to be patient enough to do research and cultivation. They also had to have the talent. From university to the 2 years after he graduated, he also immersed himself in cultivating rare orchids, but he did not have any achievements. He was so poor that he could only afford to eat instant noodles. Later on, he entered the entertainment industry. It was really a coincidence. He did not expect that he seemed to be quite suitable for this industry. The first time he brought a newcomer, he became popular. Later on, he took root in this industry. Fu Yunruo understood this very well. Just like many of her classmates in the past, they majored in this major, but many of them did not engage in this industry. Moreover, what they liked might not be able to make a living. There were very few people who could choose to engage in an industry that they liked. "Brother Chi, you are very suitable for the entertainment industry." Chi Weicheng smiled. "It's okay. I can barely make it." Then he said, "You are also very suitable for the entertainment industry. Have you considered the matter about entering the entertainment industry?" "Ah." Chi Weicheng said seriously, "My judgment of people is rarely wrong. You have a very unique and beautiful face, and it's very easy for the audience to remember you. Your face has a wide range of acting roles, and it's suitable for any drama. You have a lot of natural advantages, and I can see the potential in you to become famous." Fu Yunruo could not help but touch her face. Was she really that good? In fact, her current facial features were similar to her previous life. It was just that her current appearance was the enhanced and refined version. The original owner of this body had been wearing heavy makeup since junior high school. The heavy makeup and big red lips made her look very aggressive. Ever since she came to this world, she did not touch any makeup. At most, she would use some moisturizing cream. She even used the same moisturizing cream as the baby. Now, she could be considered a natural carving. Anyway, she felt that she looked better without makeup than with heavy makeup. In fact, the original owner of this body had appeared in public before. Because of her relationship with the female lead, she had a very bad reputation in the entertainment industry. She believed that Chi Weiqing must have heard of her before. He might have even seen her in public before. It was just that he did not connect the two of them. As for the acting skills that you are worried about, the company has a professional teacher. You don't have to worry about it at all. Yun Ruo's existence was already half popular. With some polishing, she could definitely shine. Fu Yun Ruo felt that Chi Weiqing's eloquence was really good. She was moved by his words. After hesitating for a moment, she still reluctantly rejected. No, at least for the next 2 years, her life was more important. Everything else was meaningless. Thinking about what she was thinking about last night, Fu Yun Ruo said, "But I want to do some live broadcasts. For example, the kind that does not show my face. It's just that I am not particularly good at anything. I don't know what to do." Last night, the baby cried in the middle of the night. She had forgotten about this matter. Only now did she remember. Fu Yun Ruo was very distressed. She did not know what to broadcast. If it was a musical instrument, she could play the piano. However, she was not considered professional. Broadcast? Chi Weiqing said, "This is not bad." He was very enthusiastic about the idea. "Why don't you broadcast raising flowers?" Fu Yun Ruo hesitated. "Is this okay?" Of course, there are many kinds of broadcast content. There are a lot of live broadcasts about raising pets like cats and dogs. There are also live broadcasts about raising flowers. Orchids have always been one of the most popular flowers in our country. This is definitely the right choice. Chi Weiqing's idea was very reasonable. The main reason was that Yun Ruo worked in the flower nursery to cultivate orchids. This broadcast was very suitable. Fu Yun Ruo nodded repeatedly. Her eyes were shining. Professionals were indeed different. What he said was very reasonable. If you want to do a broadcast, choose Panda Broadcasting. I know this broadcasting company. The contract is relatively fair. Moreover, I know the person in charge. Chi Weiqing thought that although live broadcasting and the entertainment industry were two different industries, they were actually inseparable. There were many people who went to the entertainment industry after becoming popular through live broadcasting. It was also common for celebrities in the entertainment industry to maintain their popularity through live broadcasting. Yun Ruo going to do a broadcast was also considered to have one foot in the entertainment industry. He could not let such a good seedling be picked up by others. Panda Broadcasting and Apple Entertainment were subsidiary companies of the same company. In the future, Yun Ruo could develop wherever she wanted. Fu Yun Ruo nodded very seriously. "I will consider it carefully." Chi Weiqing knew that going too far was as bad as falling short. He did not continue to be entangled in this topic. Instead, he naturally changed the topic. "I will bring the teacher to the city tonight. I might not be back until the day after tomorrow. I will leave this place to you." "This is what I should do." Fu Yun Ruo agreed readily. Then, she asked with concern, "Is there any problem with Uncle Guo's health?" "It's not a big deal. It's just that he is getting old and needs to do more checkups." "Okay." Fu Yun Ruo was relieved. "You know, the teacher's temper is a little stubborn." Fu Yun Ruo understood and said, "Don't worry. I will ask Uncle Guo if there is anything I need to tell him later." "Sorry to trouble you." "It's no trouble." Fu Yun Ruo did not care. This was originally her job scope. Chapter 12. Fu Yun took Chi Weiqing's words to heart. At night, she carried the baby and turned on her phone to download the Panda live streaming app. Chi Wen leaned in Fu Yun's arms and stared at the phone screen. He looked very serious, as if he could understand it. Fu Yun did not want the child to come into contact with electronic products too early, but this little guy was especially naughty tonight. Unless you did not play with your phone, you would stick to her as soon as you saw her pick up the phone. She had no choice but to carry the baby. Fortunately, the baby only wanted to watch and did not reach out to snatch the phone, so he did not disturb her. Fu Yun decided to start the live streaming as soon as possible. She felt that Brother Chi's suggestion was very helpful. She still had a job in this rural area, so she did not have many choices for live streaming content. She did not know how to cook famous dishes and only knew how to cook some home-cooked dishes. She could not sing better than professional singers. She had to show her face in a mukbang broadcast. She could not possibly film these unpolluted rural scenery, right? Fu Yun scrolled through the recommended live streaming on the homepage, and she could not stop scrolling. The live streaming room with millions of fans was super lively and interesting. No wonder the live streaming industry was so popular. It was indeed poisonous. Once you entered, you could not leave. If it were not for a little fat hand slapping on the screen, Fu Yun would continue to be addicted to the live streaming and could not stop. Only then did she remember her business. She had to study how the live streamer did it. She studied the rules, registered an account, opened the live streaming room, and chose the tag. What was the tag for cloud nurturing flowers? She searched and indeed, there was a live streaming related to flower nurturing, so she chose the tag accordingly. After studying the live streaming room, Fu Yun began to study the contract. If possible, Fu Yun did not want to sign the contract. She was worried that if her identity information was leaked, it would be easy to find traces. Then, her efforts to hide for so long would be in vain. The profits of Panda live streaming were divided into two categories: those who signed the contract and those who did not sign the contract. Those who did not sign the contract and the platform would get a 30-70 split. Those who signed the contract would get a higher percentage than those who did not sign the contract. Fu Yun felt that she was thinking too much. She might not be able to make any waves, so she did not have to think about signing the contract for the time being. Uncle Guo left with Chi Weiqing after dinner that day. Fu Yun Ruo took on the heavy responsibility of taking care of the flower beds. Early the next morning, she carried one over. This was the first time that Fu Yun was in charge of the orchids in the flower shed alone. She was quite nervous and tensed up even more. The value of the orchids in the flower shed was immeasurable. She had to take good care of them. If Fu Yun wanted to do a live broadcast of growing flowers, but the flower bed was not her own, she felt that she had to seek the opinion of the owner of the flower bed first. If Uncle Guo did not agree, she would think of something else. In short, she had to make the live stream a success. If Fu Yun had been taking care of and studying the orchids carefully during this period of time, she would not be able to get out of this pit. She was fascinated by the various forms of orchids and felt that it was a great thing to raise a flower calmly and let it bloom in its most beautiful form. She looked at the mutant orchid that Uncle Guo had spent so much effort to cultivate and wondered if she could cultivate a mutant orchid. Baby Wenwan was very quiet and obedient. If Fu Yun was working at the side, he would stay in the pram and hold a small toy car in his hand. He sat steadily and looked in Fu Yun Ruo's direction with his big black eyes from time to time. She was indeed the woman who gave birth to him. Even if she was bare-faced, under the contrast of the orchids, she was more beautiful than a flower. His appearance was very similar to a woman's, but he was more handsome. In his previous life, even though there were many scandals and controversies about him, there were still many fans who were fascinated by his face. He approved of this woman's idea of becoming a live stream host to earn money and not show her face, but he was not willing for her to enter the entertainment industry. No one could understand it better than him, who had been in the entertainment industry for more than 10 years. He had climbed from the bottom to the top and had seen many dark and dirty things along the way. This woman was so naive and stupid, she would definitely be eaten until there was nothing left. So, it was fine to be a live stream host who did not show her face and earn some money. When he grew up, he would be able to earn money on his own. At that time, he would not have to worry about money anymore. Uncle Guo and Chi Weicheng came back in the afternoon of the second day. Uncle Guo was in front and walked quickly. Chi Weicheng carried 2 big bags and tried his best to catch up. They entered the house one after the other. Fu Yun Ruo had just coaxed Wenwan to take an afternoon nap in the room. When she heard the commotion outside, she quickly walked out and greeted the two of them. Then, she asked with concern, "Uncle Guo, how's the checkup?" Uncle Guo snorted, "It's unnecessary." Then, he returned to his room. Chi Weicheng smiled and said, "It's not a big problem." It's just that her blood pressure is a little high. You just have to pay more attention to it. Fu Yunruo was relieved when she heard that. It was good that she was fine. These are my teacher's medicine. When I'm not around, I'll have to trouble you to help supervise her. Okay. Fu Yunruo looked at the number of times she had taken the medicine and silently remembered it in her heart. When Qi Weiqing returned, Fu Yunruo was embarrassed to leave him to take an afternoon nap. She whispered to Qi Weiqing in the living room. Qi Weiqing was very concerned about Fu Yunruo's future development and asked her if she had made a decision. Fu Yunruo honestly told him about her progress and then said, "But if I really want to do a live broadcast, I still have to ask Uncle Guo. Teacher won't mind." Qi Weiqing said, "How do you plan to do a live broadcast?" "I've thought about this for a long time. I want to broadcast the process of me cultivating a mutated orchid." Fu Yunruo's eyes were sparkling. "Although I haven't cultivated one yet, I really want to cultivate a good-looking orchid like Uncle Guo." This was also a kind of flower cultivation. Fu Yunruo felt that compared to the process of watering, fertilizing, and patting the flowers every day, she felt that this was more challenging. Although it was very difficult, what if it worked? If she succeeded, she could also boast shamelessly that she was an expert in this field. Orchids normally took about 4 to 5 years to grow from seed to flower, but now that they paid attention to scientific cultivation, they could be artificially induced to shorten the time to 2 to 3 years. Fu Yunruo felt that she could start from seed. Even if she couldn't make it mutate in the end, it could still flower. It could be considered a perfect ending. After chatting for a while, Qi Weiqing's phone suddenly rang. He smiled apologetically at Fu Yunruo. "I'll take this call first." "Go ahead." Fu Yunruo smiled and replied. Qi Weiqing walked to the side to talk. Fu Yunruo thought that she had been out for quite a long time, so she quickly returned to her room. The moment the door closed, she could faintly hear Brother Qi say to the other side of the phone, "Soon." After she entered the room, when Wan was still asleep, Fu Yunruo heaved a sigh of relief. She thought that if the baby woke up and heard Brother Qi's voice, why didn't he make a fuss? She didn't know where the little guy's hostility came from. Fu Yunruo thought of the 2 words she accidentally heard and thought that Uncle Guo's physical examination had already been completed, so Brother Qi should be going back soon. Apple Entertainment was in the capital. As a top manager, he probably couldn't leave for too long. It was rare to have a friend who she could chat with. Thinking that they wouldn't be able to meet again soon, she felt quite reluctant. However, it was normal for people to meet and part. Because Qi Weiqing was around, Fu Yunruo wasn't in a hurry to get off work. She cooked dinner for them at around 5 o'clock and ate with them at their invitation. Fu Yunruo guessed correctly. After dinner, before she left, Qi Weiqing said goodbye to them. Fu Yunruo asked, "Are you leaving tonight?" "My flight is tomorrow. I have to leave tonight. Otherwise, he wouldn't be able to make it." This remote village was very far from the city, and the road conditions were complicated. He had to drive 5 to 6 hours to find a hotel in the city to stay the night. The next day, he had to drive another 2 to 3 hours to the airport and take a flight back to the capital. Qi Weiqing didn't stay for long and was about to leave. Before he left, he asked Old Guo for a pot of orchids. Old Guo, who was already in a bad mood, suddenly frowned and said, "Get lost. Don't ruin my orchids." Although he was scolding, Old Guo still gave him a pot of orchids that looked the best to take care of. Qi Weiqing held the pot of orchids and quickly left with a smile. "Teacher, I'll come again next time when I'm free." Uncle Guo roared angrily, "If you come again, I'll break your legs." Fu Yunruo didn't dare to say anything. She thought that Uncle Guo must be reluctant to let Brother Qi leave. He was actually very happy that someone remembered him, but he didn't mean what he said. However, she didn't expect that the next day, Uncle Guo was still angrily scolding Qi Weiqing for ruining the orchids. Fu Yunruo listened for a long time and couldn't help but say weakly, "Actually, Brother Qi is very good. He can take good care of the orchids." He was much more professional than her. Uncle Guo was still angry. That damn brat didn't want to take care of them himself. He wanted to give them to that brat. Every pot of orchids died. What a waste of my flowers. Fu Yunruo blinked her eyes. She was curious as to who that brat was. But Uncle Guo didn't say anything else. Fu Yunruo didn't ask further. She was afraid that the more she asked, the angrier he would be. After a long time, Fu Yunruo guessed that Uncle Gua wasn't angry anymore. She went up to him and asked, "Uncle Gua, do you think I can cultivate orchids now?" During this period of time, she had been assisting Uncle Gua. She had also read the few books that Uncle Gua gave her, but she didn't try it out, so she didn't know if it was possible. Uncle Gua looked over. Fu Yunruo felt a little embarrassed, but she still expressed her thoughts. "It's like this. I want to do a live broadcast." She explained her thoughts and the content of her live broadcast in detail. After Uncle Gua heard it, he snorted coldly. "You only know how to think of such fancy things." Then, he walked away with his hands behind his back. Fu Yunruo blinked. Did Uncle Gua mean that he agreed or disagreed? She couldn't figure out Uncle Gua's thoughts until she reached home. In the end, she thought listlessly that it probably wouldn't work. Fu Yunruo hugged her son and said dejectedly, "Son, it looks like we won't be able to earn pocket money part-time." She still had to continue thinking of suitable live broadcasts. Chiwon exclaimed. He placed his soft, chubby hand on her face. He thought to himself, "Stupid woman. Grandpa Gua didn't object to your live broadcast." Fu Yunruo didn't know what her son was thinking. Her depressed mood lasted until the next day. Fu Yunruo brought her son to the flower shed. She acutely realized that the layout of the flower shed had changed. Uncle Gua's flower shed was very big. It was nearly 1,000 square meters. In the past 20 years, he had cultivated orchids that were in good condition. There were only 73 pots of orchids that were in the process of being cultivated. Hence, there was a lot of space between them. But now, she clearly realized that many of the orchids that were convenient to move around had been moved. It was more orderly and saved more space. In the right corner of the flower shed, there was a large empty space. This empty space was surrounded by 2 shelves, leaving only one door open. Fu Yunruo walked in to take a look. There were many incubators with constant temperature, as well as potted plants and plant materials. Fu Yunruo's eyes welled up with tears. Uncle Gua walked in. He placed the seeds and sprouts in his hands on the plain table. "Uncle Gua, thank you." Fu Yunruo's eyes reddened. She thought that Uncle Gua didn't like her doing live broadcasts. She didn't expect that he would give her such a big surprise. She was so surprised that she wanted to cry. That was why she really, really liked this place. Her hometown in another world had a lot of kindness and beauty. Uncle Gua saw that she was so touched that her eyes were brimming with tears. He felt very awkward. "If you want to hua here. Don't touch my flowers." His tone was much gentler. "Okay." Fu Yunruo replied with a heavy nasal sound. Uncle Gua put down the things and left to observe his precious flowers. Fu Yunruo wiped away the tears from the corners of her eyes and began to arrange the seeds and sprouts. She smiled like a flower. This pear blossom with tears was very moving. On the other side, Chi Weicheng was travel-worn. He spent a day and a night returning to the capital. He didn't even have time to return home to put away his luggage before he was urgently summoned to the company. "Ah Chung, you're finally back." Yuan Xian specially waited at the entrance of the building. When he saw Chi Weicheng, he immediately went up to him excitedly. "If you didn't come back, I wouldn't have been able to take it." "Yuan bro," Chi Weicheng shouted. Then he smiled and said, "Didn't I rush back? It's been hard on you." Yuan Xian carefully took the pot of orchids from Chi Weicheng's hands. He let out a big sigh of relief. He could finally deal with that ancestor. Yuan Xian immediately returned to his well-dressed elite appearance and walked in side by side with Chi Weicheng. "Yuan bro," Chi bro along the way. The company's celebrity employees all greeted them when they saw them. If Chi Weicheng was one of the publicly recognized top managers in the entertainment industry, then Yuan Xian was the king of the aces. Yuan Xian was 45 years old this year and was a legend in the entertainment industry. He was publicly recognized as the #1 manager and also the head of Apple Entertainment's management department. In his management career, he had only managed 3 celebrities. Each one of them eventually became a legend of their era. The first celebrity left the industry after reaching the top to get married and have children. The second celebrity unfortunately died of a terminal illness 3 years after reaching the top. Now, the third celebrity he managed was Apple Entertainment's #1, Siyu, who had won the Golden Horse Award for 3 consecutive years. Siyu debuted at the age of 20. In his first movie, He won the Best Actor award and the Best Newcomer award. However, he didn't reach the top immediately after his debut. Every time the marketing accounts said that he was going to fall, he would always use more and more dazzling results to refresh the world's understanding of the peak. Originally, managing such a superstar was the most dazzling achievement in Yuan Xin's career. However, after working together for so many years, he just wanted to beat himself to death for trying so hard to sign him. He was hard to please and his temper wasn't bad. It was just that sometimes, he was too much of a dog. He felt that he had lost a lot of hair. For example, recently, his new orchid died after 5 days. Then, his attitude was the same. A famous television station invited him to participate in a variety show. The flower died, and he didn't want to go. A famous director invited him to be the male lead in a movie. The flower died, and he didn't want to do it. A popular IP script was sent to him to see if he was interested. The flower died, and he didn't want to watch it. This wasn't the most infuriating thing. After hearing that Shi Weiqing was going to visit his teacher, he started to cause trouble again. He insisted on buying a pot of his teacher's orchid to raise. The reason was because his teacher's orchid had only withered after half a month. At first, he could still buy it. Later, his teacher somehow found out that all the flowers he sold had died and refused to sell them. No matter how high the price was, there was no room for negotiation. No matter who tried to persuade him, it was useless. This time, when he heard that Shi Weiqing was going, he insisted on buying a pot. He clearly knew that if he raised a pot, it would die. However, he didn't believe it. In his opinion, the orchid was so cute. Wouldn't it be better to let it be beautiful alone? If it wasn't for the fact that he wanted this dog of a man who hadn't accepted any scripts for more than a year to do some work, he wouldn't have followed him to harm this pitiful plant. You're tuning in to the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.